Hello and welcome to Purely Academic, your potentially educational podcast. This is the monthly stuff for November 2025. I'm Dr. Jonathan Lack. I write about movies. I teach cinema studies at the University of Colorado, and I probably really should be grading papers right now, but fuck it, we're doing a podcast.
And I'm Sean Chapman, high school English teacher by day, otaku by night, and due to my diligent and remarkably thorough research for today's monthly 10 section, I can confidently assert that I'm the world's leading authority on Taylor Swift and her intersection with William Shakespeare.
Well, I'm excited. That's either sarcasm or you just really have done the research, and we're going to learn that Sean became a Swiftie.
Oh, I'm not a Swiftie. I don't have to be the world's leading authority on Taylor Swift and her intersection with William Shakespeare to be a Swiftie.
There you go. That makes sense. We have a lot of stuff for you guys today. It's been a little over a month since we did a monthly stuff, so we've got games to talk about, including continued thoughts on things like Ghost of Yōtei and Hades 2, new thoughts on games like Pokémon Legends ZA. I have just a lot of school shit I need to talk about because I think it's going to be funny and interesting. We've got news on things from Halo to Godzilla to Doctor Who, so we've got a lot to get into today. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We are finally through September and October, which is the brutal stretch of the semester, at least for a public high school teacher. You have this long stretch where you have like no additional breaks. There's always a bunch of shit that goes down where like administration puts in a bunch of policies at the beginning of the year that they think are going to be great, and then half of them are good, and then half of them are not good, and then you have to deal with trying to change the way that the whole school is designed in specific areas halfway through the semester, and that never works. And it is definitely, once you get to November, is where the kids have kind of settled in, you've settled in, the administration has kind of decided what they're going to do for the year, and then finally you start getting like actual breaks at a regular pace. But man, September and October is a fucking haul.
Yeah, I would imagine. No breaks over here. We don't get that until Thanksgiving, and then we go back for 1 week, and then we're done. Because the college calendar is fucking stupid. And it's stupider than ever right now. CU's current academic calendar is absolutely nuts. I've gotten my teaching assignments for the spring, and I have one class that the calendar is so loopy with like when we start, and then when there are breaks, and then when they've added like midterm reading days where we can't have tests or any classes at all, that like there's one class where like my former version of the syllabus was a 15-week thing, and I can do 12 weeks, truly, like with the number of like actual like usable dates. It's such a stupid calendar.
Yes, that's kind of like this year at my school, they decided to do the MAP test, which is a kind of national testing thing. It's what we used in Colorado when I was teaching in Colorado, which is great. I think the MAP test is way better than any of the tests that are the Texas state tests, which are mostly useless, as most of those kinds of standardized tests are. The MAP test is a reactive test that changes the difficulty of the questions based on what the students get right or wrong. And so it gives you much more... It gives you just much more reliable and actionable data. The problem is that they decided to implement the MAP test several weeks into the semester is when they got the bright idea of, oh, now we should start doing this, rather than having that planned out. And so that's my version of your like, this is supposed to be 15 weeks, and now it's 12 weeks, was a, oh, well, shit, this is all, we already designed an entire calendar and all this stuff. And then now, okay, well, we have to take this day for this test. Oh, but then they want to do this other MAP test also. But realistically, a bunch of the students aren't going to finish this test in a single class period. So really, it's going to bleed into another class period and so on and so forth. And the domino effect, as you know, every teacher knows, whatever level you're at. You have your best plans you've laid in, you've got your calendar, you've all designed, you think you're good, and then a giant, brick lands on your head, and you're like, well, great, now I have to deal with this and put this in my wall somewhere they have made me build.
Yeah. Well, yeah, school is weird. I have a lot more school stuff to talk about later, because some of it I think will amuse you, Sean. Some of it is just I want to do some brainstorming with you, and it should be fun. But first, do you want to go ahead and talk about the news?
Yes, what's going on in the news, Jonathan?
Well, the big video game news that we got just a few days before recording this is that Grand Theft Auto 6 from Rockstar has been delayed from May 2026 to November 2026. Maybe that's a year out. Who the fuck knows? I'm really only putting this news item on here because when we reported on the May release date way back when, which was also like a full year out, I said, oh, there's absolutely no way the game is hitting that target because they announced it over a year before the release date, and that never happens. And Sean said, no, they're going to make it. So I was right, and you were wrong. Ha 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 ha.
I don't think I said they will make it.
You did. You were really firm on it.
They could make it. But but they also.
You said they're confident. It's far away. They're going to make it, and I said there's absolutely no way, and I was right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. At this point, a different question than me just making fun of you for no real reason.
Yes.
Do you think GTA 6? Our feelings on GTA 5, which don't really matter because that game went on to be the highest selling game of all time. But GTA 5, when it came out, felt like it was at least a full generation out of date to you and I. Like, it's a game that, like, it has some nice parts to it, but it also, like, its gameplay is, like, so archaic to when it came out, let alone today. And I'm wondering if GTA 6, like, it's going to be a late PS5 game. I'm curious if it's going to feel like up to date. Do we think it's going to have the Red Dead 2 effect of feeling really cool? I don't know. I'm curious. It's taking a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just think like the video game industry is in such a different place compared to when GTA 5 came out.
Yeah.
Where GTA 5 came out in a space where like over the course of that generation, the 360 generation, what we like think of as open world games, or like what now is kind of derisively referred to as like the Ubisoft game. At the time was like a hip new video game idea was,
right.
Oh, look at like Far Cry 3 and stuff like that, which were brand new games at that point, which just kind of changed what open world games were like. And GTA 5 came out amidst that. GTA 5 also, I think, more so than its gameplay design, it was its like narrative shit is what like really was the big problem with that game. But yes, like some of like the Rockstar's gameplay stuff just felt weird and clunky next to these very kind of slick, smooth, highly polished open world games that were coming out around that time. And then I think by the time you get to Red Dead Redemption 2, people had gotten so tired of that, what had now been derisively referred to as the Ubisoft games for like 5 years at that point, that when Red Dead Redemption 2 has that old school Rockstar, like, whatever, man, like there's no fucking towers, there's just shit out in this world, there's just like initials on the map that you go to for specific missions, but everything else is this like very kind of immersive fluid open world thing. I think that all of a sudden felt really kind of rich and new and different because nobody else made GTA style open world games for like 5 years post GTA 5. And I kind of feel like GTA 6 is going to be in a very similar spot to that.
Yeah. Where
just because nobody else does Grand Theft Auto style open worlds, which was just what every open world game was in the PS2 generation. Shit like Jak 2 is just like, oh, we made our platforming game and then GTA 3 came out and it was the biggest thing in the world. Why don't we make the sequel to our platforming game a GTA game, right? Like there was just so many of those old GTA style open world games that then went out of favor and Rockstar just kept on with it. And so because they've never changed their model, I think like their open world model, I'm going to guess, is still going to feel fresh and different just because nobody else fucking makes games like that.
I think I basically agree. And I think the thing about Red Dead 2, though, is Red Dead 2 also is just a much more timeless game than any GTA game. I think that's true about Red Dead 1 also. Like those games, because the Old West setting really forces Rockstar to rein in a lot of their worst writing habits. Like, it makes them more mature, less sophomoric, less like because it's in the Old West and it has to comment on current politics more obliquely by design, being a period piece, they can't do the super, like, on-the-nose shit you get in GTA sometimes. And so, like, Red Dead 2 is a game that just feels out of time in the best way. Like, I think in its writing and its design, in like, a lot of the stuff it does, it's not just unique for Rockstar. There's just no other game that plays like Red Dead 2, really, in its overall, like, design. And I would be curious to see if they can do that with GTA. Though we've still seen effectively nothing from GTA 6. So, like, we've seen, like, a cinematic trailer. So we'll see when and if this does actually come out.
Yes, well, I'm sure it will come out. The question is when. It would be the most shocking thing in the world to me if they're like, yeah, fuck it. We're not going to put it out. Whatever, we're just going to walk away.
We're moving on to GTA 7.
Yeah, Take-Two just shutters as a company. Because they're like, well, fuck. There goes our whole business plan. Just the video game industry just sort of calls it a day. It's like, fuck, you go play Roblox. I don't know. I guess Fortnite, and that's it.
Sean, here's the thing. Here's what's holding me back. Whenever we get this is like saying we're gonna have a game in November 2026. I think the last 10 years of American politics, life, everything has made me so reticent to have that kind of time horizon, even 1 year out. I'm like, well, you don't fucking know. Trump could have put a full tariff on the idea of video games themselves and forced the Supreme Court to go along with it. And then who the fuck knows? Who the fuck, November 2026, that might as well be 2150. Who the hell knows what's going to happen then? That's where I just go, when you're talking about stuff that far out, I'm like, I don't fucking know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe someone will have come and taken all our PS5s and thrown them in the ocean. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, maybe, just the Grim Reaper will have arrived and just said, humanity, you just fucked it up too much. And you just take us all, into that sleep, long, dark embrace. And we go to a much more peaceful, quieter world. It's very possible.
Yeah, do you get what I mean? There's something about the psychic shock of recent years that when people are like, we're going to have a new game in November 2026. And I'm like, you good dudes, you don't even know. We might not have any money to buy your game in November 2026. You have no idea.
We might not even have Novembers by then. We might have decided we only need 11 months and we just got rid of November. You have no fucking clue, man.
All right, speaking of other games coming out in the nebulous future, Halo Studios, formerly 343, has officially announced Halo Campaign Evolved. See what they did there? It's a complete remake of Halo Combat Evolved's campaign in UE5. This will include redesigned levels, weapons, and mechanics, including sprint, because 343 never understood what Halo is, newly recorded voiceover, and 2 prequel levels. It will also be coming to PS5 day and date, with further confirmation that this will happen with Halo titles going forward, assuming there are Halo titles going forward, which is a big if at this point. Sean, I don't know. This seems like it got the biggest shrug of an announcement, like of a reaction from the fan base that you could ask for from a new Halo thing. Is it because this just seems nyeh to people, or is it because the entire idea of Halo seems nyeh to people by now?
I think it's a little bit of both. Did you watch any of the trailers and in the stuff that came out for it?
I did, and it doesn't look bad, but I honestly have a pretty similar reaction to what I had with... Well, let me back up. I was talking to my brother about this the other night, because he just played through all the Halo games with his wife for the first time. And we were talking, and they did the thing where they switched back and forth between the graphics on Halo Anniversary, where you can see the original and see the Anniversary graphics. And he and I both agree now that, Anniversary looks so much more dated than original Halo. Original Halo has this absolutely timeless aesthetic that you put it on anything now. And, yes, is it visibly from the early 2000s? Yeah, it is, but aesthetically it feels very timeless, as we said. It's just this really cool sci-fi, very colorful, very imaginative look, and then Halo Anniversary looks like a late 360 game, and late 360 games don't look like games look anymore. And I think this looks like a modern-day UE5 game, and we also know they're adding in stuff like sprint and whatnot, and it's kind of a pithy line, but I do think the evolution of sprint in Halo is this interesting synecdoche for everything 343 never understood about Halo. And so I just and then the title is so stupid, and they're not doing any multiplayer, which is the actual thing that Halo is most famous for. And, what I really would like is just Halo Master Chief Collection on PS5. And so I kind of look at this and go, okay, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm definitely not particularly enthusiastic about it either. I do think, just to take a moment to talk about the title, oh my god, it sounds like a joke we would make.
Yes.
It's like, oh, the new Halo remake, it's the Halo Campaign Evolved. It's like, fucking Jesus Christ. But I guess, they've run into the issue of well, we already have one remake of this fucking game already, so how do we start to distinguish all these things? And yeah, it's just... looking at the footage, they announced this with a big trailer, and then there was also a long video that I watched that was basically a playthrough of most of the Silent Cartographer level. And there's just something weird about watching it where I think this is feels like it's in this remake no man's land, at least based on what they've shown, where I feel like you've got kind of two general approaches to how you can do these things. One is you do your, basically what they did with the original Anniversary Edition, or something like the Demon's Souls remake, where you are just doing, it is the gameplay and the game design of that original game is there. Like, it's the exact game logic, but you are then doing something on top of that game logic to use a different graphics engine to give you an updated, modern overall look. And I definitely agree with you that when I've played the Halo Master Chief Collection and stuff like that, most recently for my most recent playthrough of Halo, I just put it on classic graphics, which is the great thing about the Anniversary Edition, is that it doesn't matter that the new graphics look like ass, especially like they look more like ass the more time goes on, because you just can play a very clean, high frame rate version of the original game by just hitting the back button and then you never think about it, and that's great. I wish that was what all of those kinds of remakes did. They should always have the original graphics available.
Yes.
If you've got the original gameplay stuff in there, allow us to flip between them. Maybe if it's hard to flip it live, like the way that Halo Anniversary did, give us an option in the menu when you load up a save or something to switch it over. I wish that all those remakes did that. But that's one approach. You keep the gameplay exactly identical, but you update the graphics and the look of it. On the other side, you've got something, I think the most successful examples recently is Capcom stuff with Resident Evil, where they have done like the Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil 4 remake, where you are totally reimagining the game. And you're like dramatically reimagining the game from top to bottom, beyond the graphics, but the gameplay mechanics are completely revisited. The level design is completely revisited. You can almost think of them more as a new game than as this is the same game with a new coat of paint. It is a reimagining of what that original game is, to the extent that, like, if you're thinking about something in a top 10 end of year list, there's no question about Resident Evil 4 Remake being a brand new video game versus like Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition in 2012 or whenever it came out, or 2011, I guess. It's like, was that really a quote unquote new game at that point? Maybe, maybe not. Those more modern remakes are definitely like a brand new idea for a video game that they've rebuilt from the ground up.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. And like, yeah, that there's the faithful remake, and then there is the new game inspired by the old game, and I think that both of those can be really exciting in different ways.
Yes.
And I think what you're about to say is this one feels like it is neither, and that's a weird choice.
Yeah, it's really weird because it's like, if you watch the video of that Silent Cartographer playthrough, and maybe other levels are more different, I don't know. That's the only thing I've seen. But that's also what they showed, and so it feels like their pitch for the game is look at the Silent Cartographer level. It is exactly the same as the design of the original Silent Cartographer level, with the only exception being like they took the tree out that keeps you from driving the Warthog up to where you fight the hunters. So you can drive the Warthog up that little hill for the first time you fight the hunters on that level, on the little hatch or whatever that opens up in the cutscene at the end of that level. Which is like, that's not what I would describe as like a meaningful change to the level design. I don't even know if I think it's a good change to the level design. I'm not entirely sure why we would want Warthogs to be up there. There's also a sense of like they've kind of widened things out a little bit more because there is 4-player co-op is a new thing as opposed to the 2-player co-op in the original game. So there's like a little bit of accommodating for the space it feels like for that. But other than that, like enemy placement, geometry, like all that stuff is like exactly the same. So you're not getting, something like the Resident Evil 4 remake where it's like, are there lots of areas that remind you of and are very similar to areas from the original game and like the castle and stuff like that? Yes. Are there areas that are one-to-one the exact same? No. Because the game is different. Like, the game is so different, you can't have the same areas. That's even more so with the Resident Evil 2 remake and stuff, where you're from a whole different fucking camera perspective. You can't make the levels the same way. And so there's just this sense of, like, it feels less like a new video game and it more feels like a fan project where they're like trying to remake Silent Cartographer as like a fan thing in, it's like when you have people that are like, let's remake Morrowind in the Skyrim engine as a mod fan project. Like, that's cool for fans to do. But as an actual product, it just starts to feel really bizarre, where I'm not entirely sure why I would want to play through Silent Cartographer almost exactly as it was, but without the game mechanics as they were, because that's the thing, is that they have changed the game mechanics. Like the assault rifle is not the assault rifle from the original Halo. They've made it resemble, both graphically and in game design, the Halo 3 assault rifle with the 32 round clip. It doesn't have the crazy big spread. The melee attacks work like modern Halo games, not like the original Melee, so there's no lunge in the original Halo. The physics collisions with like vehicles and stuff are more modern Halo style, so you don't have the like janky but very endearing, if this vehicle is moving at 0.001 miles per hour and it hits something, that thing will just die instantly, a horrible bloody death, because it's just like, if this object is in motion, it will kill whatever it touches, is how the logic in the original Halo worked. The grenades are not the like gigantic fucking nukes that the grenades were in the original Halo. And there's just a sense of, if you're making the gameplay sort of like this kind of generic 343 Studios era Halo gameplay, which is what it looks like, but you're just retaining the exact same level design, I just really don't understand what the point of that is. I don't know if I would be hugely excited for a totally rethought from the ground up version of the original Halo, where Silent Cartographer was like a radically rethought level. But I would respect that approach a lot more than this, where I just watch it. I'm like, I have no idea why I would want to play this over just playing the original. It's this weird beast of like this chimera where you're kind of trying to half do one version of a remake, half do another version of a remake. And it just ends up feeling totally pointless to me, at least based on what they've shown so far. On top of things like, I don't think the UE5 like version of the graphics, they technically look better, but similar to the Anniversary Edition, they don't communicate an art design to me in a way that feels compelling. Like it kind of like that Anniversary Edition, it just feels like they've kind of taken a generic version of what Halo looks like and built a game around that, rather than what, Bungie always did, was rethink what Halo looks like every single game they made. Right? Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, and Halo Reach are all very different looking games that all have a very different idea of what Halo looks like. And this just feels like it's this, we've just got this, it's sort of Halo 3-ish, and there's not a clear kind of statement they're trying to make with an aesthetic approach to it. Either by trying to respect the original aesthetic, which they're not doing, or by trying to make it like, this is what Halo should look like from here on. There's just nothing there. And so there's kind of no way for me as a kind of old school Halo fan to look at this and feel anything other than it's the same kind of mealy-mouthed, cowardly approach to Halo that 343 has kind of always had post Halo 4. Halo 4 at least was was a big swing of a game, I feel like, where they're trying to figure out what they were doing. Not that swing didn't land all the time, but they were like going for it, and trying to make their mark on the franchise. And I feel like after Halo 4, that studio just totally couldn't figure out what the fuck they wanted to do. And this just feels like an extension of that. Like, they have changed the name of the studio to Halo Studios, but this doesn't make me convinced that they have changed their approach to the franchise in any way.
That's a really good way to put it. And I so agree. Art direction is always, 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 always going to be more important than graphics, because graphical fidelity only matters up to the point that you can realize cool art direction. And Halo 1 has some of the best art direction in the history of video games. And yeah, UE5 looks better than the tools they had in 2001. Great. Doesn't have the art direction is nowhere near what they were doing in 2001. So, like, who cares? And I just, the other thing is Halo 1 has not really aged. It's fine. It's great. It's so playable. It still feels very timeless, Like, I think you can go back to Halo 1. And are there weird, janky parts of it compared to later games? Yes. But is it like a fundamentally different kind of thing that like people today could just never wrap their heads around? No. And so I love Halo 1 and I would play it any day of the week. And this, as you say, it's like, and you and I are not opposed to this. We would have said a lot about this about Resident Evil 4 too. We think that's pretty much a perfect game. But then Capcom made a new game that was really cool and we both dug the shit out of and had high on our top 10. So like, we're not opposed to interesting remakes of sacred cows. It's just, this doesn't seem interesting.
Yeah. So obviously, they've only shown a little bit of it. They've only really shown that one level in that trailer. So who knows, maybe there's stuff they haven't shown that does go more in a radical direction. But just based on what they've done so far, it is not a particularly inspiring release.
Based on what they've done so far and the last 15 years of Halo games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's, there's also still no Switch 2 announcement. for this or any other Xbox game, though the Xbox heads keep insisting every time they announce a new game that they are interested in the platform. I'm pretty curious what's going on there. I know Nintendo was late to get dev kits out, but I am guessing if Xbox wanted dev kits, they could get dev kits. And we have seen a lot of the other major third-party publishers make this push. Capcom has announced Resident Evil 8 and 9. What are we on? What is it called? Requiem?
Yes, 9, which is Requiem.
Requiem, okay. Ubisoft announced Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like, we've got a lot of these, of big ones. And I think there were so many reports before the Switch 2 launched of Xbox really going to be going multi-platform on A, B, and C, and none of that's materialized, and so I'm a little curious what's going on there.
Yeah, I wonder if it is just like, they were late to the start on getting some of those dev kits, and obviously it takes time to develop these things, that maybe they're just waiting to announce some of that stuff when it gets closer to a release. But I'm with you that it feels like you would have expected that to have happened, because the Switch 2's been out for 6 months or so at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a little weird to me. I did think it was funny though that on the PlayStation thing, which I don't think it's actually all that remarkable at this point that Halo's coming to PlayStation. That was such an inevitability.
Yes. The Gears of War is on PlayStation. Yeah.
I mean, ever since Xbox did their whole podcast about there's just 4 games coming out, and it's okay, it's going to be everything eventually, and we're just there. But I do think it's funny that announcement was from I don't know his name, but the community manager at Halo Studios. Was on a show wearing a PlayStation t-shirt. And that was he was like that's how hard they're going. And yeah, Halo's on PlayStation now. And there was a kind of a Grode-worthy element to it of that would be a thing I feel like you could do if this was one of the early games they announced to go to PlayStation, that you're trying to make the big announcement about it with a dude with the PlayStation shirt and everything. At this point, it just feels yeah, of course. Everything is. We get it. We know everything's going to be out. If anything, I'm shocked that they haven't already ported Master Chief Collection yet. I'm sure that they're going to do that. And that's the thing that I'm honestly most interested in, is them just get that on PlayStation.
Yes.
But it is weird.
Yeah, I do think this probably got more headlines, for people who maybe haven't been following the news as much, because Halo going multi-platform is just... That's like Sega saying Sonic is going multi-platform in a way that them doing it with Forza or Gears of War isn't quite as big a piece of news, so I can kind of get that. And I also understand why they are simping for PlayStation so hard, because you know what? PlayStation gamers still buy games, and Xbox has trained their audience out of buying games. So they are in this weird position of wanting their competitors' dollars much, much more than their own homegrown fan bases, which, wow, what a way to run a company. Great. Phil Spencer still has his job. Wonderful.
But you making the Mario and Sonic comparison is making me think of a very grim version of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympics games, which was the big crossover. It's oh my god, it's Mario and Sonic together at last, but it's Joel and the Master Chief. It's Joel from The Last of Us, and it's just the most depressing, violent fucking Olympics you've ever seen in your life. Oh, it'd be great.
Oh my god, yeah. Or a really, in the complete opposite direction, you put Master Chief into an Astrobot game, and he's just going around, and Astrobot is having fun, and Master Chief comes along and just kills everything Astrobot is interacting with.
There you go. And yes, it is just a weird world where Xbox's whole identity is just so diluted at this point that the announcement of a Halo game coming out on PlayStation just got such a shrug to me, where it felt but it is very similar to the Sonic and Mario thing, of where by the time that actually happened, it just was so okay, it had been so long since it felt like there was an actual rivalry between those two places, because the gap between them in terms of success was so huge that by the time you have Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, it's we're not, I'm as someone who loves Sonic 1,000 times more than Mario. I don't give a shit about Mario, and I love Sonic dearly. But there's no question that Sonic was not in the same league as Mario from a market perspective. By the time Mario and Sonic at the Olympics came out, they were not even anywhere close to the same conversation. And it's the same thing with Halo on PlayStation. It's just Halo is not the thing it was in 2007 when Halo 3 came out.
Yes.
It's been a very long time since Halo was actually a big deal. So them trying to treat the announcement of it being on PlayStation like it's a thing that anyone's really going to care about is I feel like we're quite far out of date at this point for you to try to make it a whole thing.
Well, also, Mario and Sonic the Olympic Games was a full console generation after Sonic had started going to other platforms.
Yes.
Because the first Sonic game that went multi-platform was Sonic Adventure 2. And like a very similar situation now to Xbox putting their games out. It was a re-release of an existing game. It was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on GameCube. Then other ones started trickling out, like they went back and did Sonic Adventure DX, they did the Mega Collection, all of that stuff. And so by the time you got to Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, you had people like Thomas and I, who had never, my brother and I, who had never owned a Sega console and had played 10 different Sonic games purely through Nintendo hardware, right? So, yeah, and Sonic still had quite a bit more cultural cachet, I think, at that point than Halo does now, because, Halo's last game was Halo Infinite, a game that 5 people have played, I think. And you and I are 2 of them. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, there's some like 5-hour-long crazy YouTube video essay to be made comparing Sonic X and the Halo TV show and their impact on culture. That's your metric for how you measure how much impact on the broader popular culture did these 2 franchises have.
Oh, Sonic X, way more, because I know people who have seen Sonic X. To my knowledge, no human being has watched the Halo show.
It's true. I've seen the clip where with his ass. That's what I've seen, was where he had his ass out. I was like, well, I got to take a look at that. But other than that, no, I don't think anyone's seen anything but that clip from that TV show.
In more interesting news, Toho has announced that the sequel to Godzilla Minus One is officially titled, wait for it, Godzilla Minus Zero, causing mathematicians around the world to scratch their heads in confusion. I will say I had a few different students this week ask if I had heard this news. They were very excited. Some of them I don't think had heard that there was going to be a sequel, and because this giving a title makes it more concrete, right? And I think that shows both I have developed a brand within my 8 months at the University of Colorado already that the students are going to be like, you've heard about Godzilla, right? And then B, Godzilla Minus One definitely penetrated college film studies types. They've all seen it and loved it, and that's pretty cool.
Yes, it feels like it is that kind of movie where it still has big Hollywood-style blockbuster spectacle and all that kind of stuff, but at its core, it's got that more kind of heartfelt family drama story, and it's got that kind of feel-good, it's not a movie made on a huge budget, but it won the Oscar for best special effects and all that, and the director of the movie was also the special effects director. So yeah, it definitely makes sense to me that it would get into that kind of young adult film circles. But yeah, I found this announcement is obviously very whatever, who actually gives all that much of a shit what the title of the movie is. But I did find both, obviously the title is very funny. Even funnier is the video. Did you watch the YouTube video that was the official announcement?
No, I didn't. I didn't even know there was one. Because
this is how I actually learned about it. It tells you a lot about my fucking YouTube recommendations. Is that when it was 2 minutes old or something, and from the Toho YouTube channel, I had it recommended in my YouTube feed of, it's the announcement for the next Godzilla movie title. I'm like, well, I gotta click that. And it is a 90-second long video, and all it is a long loving pan over the original title in its title treatment, and then it the minus one fades out. And minus zero comes in. It doesn't even roll over like it's a timer or whatever. All while the Godzilla music is playing. It's such an overwrought reveal for the most simple title, which is just, it's just the next number up. Even if that makes no sense, minus zero is nothing. That's, if you're making a movie called Godzilla Minus Zero, you're just making a movie called Godzilla. Let's simplify our fucking equations here, guys. It's like when they put out Kingdom Hearts 1.5 plus 2.5, and that's just Kingdom Hearts 4. You already made Kingdom Hearts 4. The next one has to be 5 now. So you have a product out that's called Kingdom Hearts 4 if you actually do the fucking math on it. And yes, there's just something very funny to me about Godzilla Minus Zero, where minus zero is not a concept. It's not a thing. It doesn't compute in any way whatsoever. But that is kind of the thing that makes it amazing.
And I think that means that if this is a trilogy, the third one will be Godzilla plus one, right? Or
that would stand to reason.
Or minus negative one, who the hell knows? Then we're going to get into full-on algebra, and you're going to have to answer a math problem and do a proof of it before they allow you in the theater.
Yes. It should also be pointed out that, is particularly in the Japanese market, the way these titles are always stylized is for Godzilla Minus One, it was Godzilla Minus 1.0. Over here, we usually see it written as Godzilla Minus One, the words. But
Yes.
the proper logo is Godzilla minus 1.0, and for this one it is Godzilla's minus 0.0 to add to the like completely pointless like numbers on it. Like, what is 0.0? That's not a thing. You can't just put 0.0 after 0 and act like it changed something.
It's fantastic. Another announcement over from Japan is that Toei has made it official that One Piece, after 25 years on the air, is becoming a seasonal anime. It will be airing from this point forward a maximum of 26 episodes a year. This follows the series' first ever planned hiatus earlier this year, halfway through the Egghead Island arc. And the plan is that they will finish Egghead in the next couple of weeks before the end of 2026. Then they will take 3 months off from January to April, and then it will return in April, the April season of anime for 2 core. For 26 episodes. This is pretty monumental news. Like, Sean, I thought you'd be interested in talking about this too, even though you don't watch One Piece, because One Piece was one of the final anime airing fully year-round, and I believe it's the only one left that was doing a fully serialized story, rather than something more episodic like Pokemon or Detective Conan or something like that. This change feels like it's been increasingly likely since the show started massively improving its production quality, starting with the Wano arc in 2019, but also because Oda Eiichiro, the author of One Piece, has very much slowed his pace in recent years. The One Piece manga only publishes around 30 chapters a year. There were 31 in 2024, from chapter 1103 to 1134, so that means that if you're airing 50 episodes a year, and you're only getting 31 chapters a year, you have some serious like adaptational deficiencies ahead of you, right? Whether this will mean the show increases the pace of its adaptation, which has for a very long time been a little under a chapter per episode, that remains to be seen. I would caution anyone thinking it will be a massive shift because, again, that slower chapter output and the very compressed style of Oda's writing and paneling means that even at 26 a year, you don't necessarily have a ton of room to play. But this is big news. This means One Piece will only be airing, half as many episodes a year. It's a big shift, I think, in anime history. Toei, I believe that means Toei has no more shows airing year-round like this, which is big news for them. It's just an interesting shift in the production of anime.
Yeah, I'm glad you added this to the timeline, because this is something I wanted to talk about, but I had kind of forgotten by the time we got to the recording of the episode that this news had come out. And it is just, it just goes to show how complete the transformation has been, right? That the trend since the beginning of anime used to be almost everything was, we're just going as long as we can go. And if like it stays successful, we're just going to crank out another episode every week until we just can't do it anymore, until eventually shows started becoming more like, we're going to do 4 core shows and kind of end there, while running alongside your sort of endless adaptations like a Dragon Ball or whatever, until slowly you start moving into, in the 90s, 2 core shows becoming very, very common, to then in the 2000s, 2 core shows becoming fairly standard. You still have your eternal shows like a Naruto and One Piece and whatnot, but 2 core was fairly standard, to the 2010s, where really 2 cores start becoming fairly rare, and 1 core shows become by far the default. And the vast majority of anime that is output is a single core, and if it's popular, maybe they'll make another season. And so it is just interesting to see this like kind of last dinosaur, outside of certain things like Sazae-san, that still is your weekly, Simpsons-esque kind of thing, this kind of more pop culture comedy show rather than the serialized drama. One Piece is the last beast in that arena, and so it finally just sort of like throwing in the towel and saying, there's no reason for us to make this show like this. It is not reasonable for them to make the show like this. Nobody else is making shows like this. And I think particularly something like My Hero Academia has just shown that you can do very reliably 2 cores every year, maintain the popularity and the pace of that, have a strong adaptation. I mean, I personally kind of fell off of My Hero Academia, but the fans of that show still really like it. And it still has a really huge fan base. And that series is ending not so long in anime form after it ended in manga form. And so I think like you can see a very clear, successful way of adapting this kind of very popular shonen battle kind of series with 2 cores every year for the kind of thing that can manage that. And that model can still work and work really well in a way that if My Hero Academia was trying to come out in the early 2000s or in the 90s and it had to do 52 episodes a year, I think the way that we think about that show would be very, very different, because you would have your big, crazy fucking filler arcs and all that kind of shit that just like go insane off the rails, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, there's really just the way that media is consumed these days and the way that media production works these days and the kind of quality that people expect from the animation and everything. This is just a totally logical shift. And honestly, I'm really shocked that it took this long, that it's 2025, and only now are they doing this, because I feel like the writing has been on the wall for almost 10 years at this point, that this is the thing that they would have to do at some point.
Yeah, and I think some of it is just, it's a big ship that takes a long time to steer. Like, I mean, we learned when they did the first hiatus in the middle of Egghead that, like, there were animators who had been deep into the Wano stuff who knew that was coming years ahead of time, because you can't just say, like, 3 weeks before you're going to do the hiatus that we're doing a hiatus. One Piece is this giant global production that, you know, takes a long time to steer that ship. And yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it is kind of funny. The day this was announced, I had a bunch of students talking to me about it, including one student who loves One Piece and wants to talk to me about it every day, which is very adorable, and I love it. But he was very sad because he loves watching it every week. And he says, "Aren't you bummed?" And I said to him, and I didn't think this was a hostile comment or anything, I said, I probably would be bummed if I was your age, but like now I'm like, I have a lot of other stuff going on. And he took that as like me calling him immature, and I'm like, no. I'm saying you have time. I'm saying you have disposable time. Because you're 20, and like I have a lot of work, and I'm not even caught up. I'm not caught up on this year's One Piece episodes. But yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it'll probably make for a stronger show. The One Piece anime has been so fucking good for the last few years that like anything they can do to just really hone in and continue that improvement, I am on board for. And like the other thing is, part of why shows did the year-round thing, and One Piece and Toei's whole model, it wasn't just for the ratings you would get every week, which is like ad revenue. Really, it was because you keep the brand awareness up for all the merchandising. The same reason why Coca-Cola has ads everywhere you go, right? Like, you would think, does Coca-Cola need to advertise? And no, you would think no, but there's actual market research that like the kind of cultural penetration is helped by the constant advertising. The thing is, I think in this day and age, in the global anime environment, you don't need the anime on the air every week of the year for One Piece to sell merchandise every week of the year, right? Like, I can understand why that was the model in the 90s, but in the 2020s, that you just don't need that, right?
Yeah. And I think specifically with Toei, I think it's interesting to look back on Dragon Ball Super, where I think Dragon Ball Super was kind of the show that demonstrated you just can't do this.
It's the show that broke Toei. Like, the Wano arc was directed by Tatsuya Nagamine and friends, coming off of Dragon Ball Super, having saved that show, and that was the domino that started changing everything at Toei.
Yeah, and there's just a sense of like trying to start up a show like Dragon Ball Super to be in the endless model, you know, not even the like we're going to go 4 cores, because there are still occasional shows that go 4 cores, like a Digimon show will still do that, but they're almost always shows aimed at very young kids, like Digimon is. But like Dragon Ball Super wasn't even that. Dragon Ball Super was like, we're just gonna fucking go, brother, and we're gonna go until we can't go anymore. And it's like, it was such a disaster so early on, and it was such a just like insane production that even though they did ultimately turn it around, I think it's like, looking back on it, it's very clear why there has not been a quote-unquote Dragon Ball Super 2, and instead they went to movies, and then they went to Daima, which is just designed to be a 2-core show that is just like, whatever Dragon Ball Super 2 would have to be a 2-core show or something like that, which at that point is kind of like a different concept than what Dragon Ball Super was originally designed to be. And so it is just interesting to see, you know, Toei has had this kind of 10-year journey to get to this point to kind of fully extricate themselves from like the most traditional classic kind of format for airing your anime that goes all the way back to the original Astro Boy. And so, it's interesting to see that we are finally at this place, and it has been like a 50-year something journey to get here.
Yes. Speaking of 50-plus year journeys, we have the first official news about Doctor Who since the conclusion of Season 41/Series 15/Season 2 with Ncuti Gatwa's very, very sudden departure. The Disney deal is officially done. Disney has canceled the series, or their incarnation of the series. The last remnants of that will be the as of yet unaired spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea, and who the fuck knows when or if that will be airing. Doctor Who will officially return on the BBC with a Christmas special in 2026, so over a year from now, written by Russell T Davies. The official statement is, the BBC remains fully committed to Doctor Who, which continues to be one of our most loved dramas, and we are delighted that Russell T Davies has agreed to write us another spectacular Christmas special for 2026. We can assure fans the Doctor is not going anywhere, and we will be announcing plans for the next series in due course, which will ensure the TARDIS remains at the heart of the BBC. So very clearly the BBC is trying to calm the panic that has culminated from the longest period of limbo Doctor Who has had since the 1990s. And so the limbo is like still a thing because we have a ways to go until this Christmas special. We don't have details on the next series. There are pretty strong reports, rumors out of the UK and their tabloids that Russell T Davies is coming back for one special and then probably not continuing. So we don't really know what the future of Doctor Who is, other than that it will return after about a 2-year break in Christmas 2026, presumably to wrap up whatever the Billie Piper nonsense is.
Yes, yeah. It is like, that statement, the official statement from the BBC is like very laser designed to not say that Russell T Davies is in that new season, right?
Yes.
That's one sentence that says he's coming back, and we're delighted that he's agreed to write this spectacular special for 2026. But then the next sentence is, we can assure fans that Doctor Who's not going anywhere, and we'll be announcing plans for the next series, right? So there's like, it's a really, classic kind of marketing, PR writing strategy there to kind of vaguely imply that Russell T Davies is going to be involved in the future of the show without actually saying that, to like give you the impression that like, oh, things are fine. And yeah, I think it's very interesting. I mean, I'm glad that, we're getting this like sooner, honestly, than I expected. Like, I thought like we were just going to be in Disney limbo for even longer than this, with how like their kind of relationship with Disney just felt like it was this weird amorphous thing that Disney clearly didn't really give a shit about Doctor Who, but it also just felt like they weren't willing to just cut it off. And so it's nice to just kind of have the Band-Aid be ripped off. I'm glad that Russell T Davies is going to presumably have to resolve this insane Billie Piper cliffhanger and can hopefully leave the show. Like, if the plan is he's going to do one more Christmas special and then he's going to walk away, and then the BBC is working on getting some other showrunner or something in for another season, that hopefully that means that Russell T Davies can then put it into a place that is like more designed for someone to pick up the mantle really nicely, a la the transition to Stephen Moffat, rather than some new person having to come in and figuring out what to do with this Billie Piper shit. Do you address it at all? Right? Which was, I think, a thing we talked about on our last Doctor Who episode, was like, what do you deal with this giant bomb he drops at the end of this thing? And I'm glad that at least Russell T Davies will have to clean up that mess he made and leave it, and hopefully leave a better situation for whoever's coming in next.
It's just, if he had just fucking ended that episode with Shooty regenerating and like fade to white on the regeneration, you can do anything with that. You can, in fact, that would be kind of perfect, because then the next writer could come in with a very Chris Eccleston style thing. If there's a new Doctor, we don't know exactly how long he's been around, something nebulous happened in between, and you can also kind of soft reset the continuity. Because that's the other thing is, it's just, I know we've been talking about this for literally years now, but like Stephen Moffat did this phenomenal job of like leaving the show in a place that was really open to whoever wanted to come next, where like the end of Capaldi's run, you have a bigger toy box than Doctor Who has ever had. He's cleaned up any like lingering continuity thing, so you don't have to deal with any stories or anything like that. Gallifrey is back. Everything's good. And then both Chibnall and RTD have taken just a giant dump on that entire idea of like leaving the show in like a nice clean place for the future. And we'll see if he can like finish all family business in one episode. I am more interested in hearing like, what are the plans going forward? Is BBC going to be doing another partnership with an American studio to try to keep this going? Are we still going to be trying to do the stupid 8 episodes per season thing? Are we going to get back to a actually more sustainable model of this? Can we get a showrunner who has no current connection to the show so we can have a clean break? Like, I think those are the questions I'm more interested in, and we shall see.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely I prefer that this is like what is happening than the like weird limbo it felt like we were in. I do think it is. I mean, I'm fairly confident that Russell T Davies is not going to come back. Just like the way this is written, regardless of rumors, it just feels like it is the most PR speak for, we're telling you he's not coming back without saying he's not coming back, because we can't say that yet. Past this one Christmas special, because I do think we just need such an injection of kind of fresh blood and a different perspective and all that kind of stuff. One thing I'm just curious about is is with the Billy Piper thing, of where my kind of read on that ending that he did for a while has been that is not supposed to be the Doctor, and if anything, it's more likely it's just Rose who's been trapped in an alternate dimension, and she's somehow body swapped with the Doctor, some random bullshit. I just don't necessarily think that he was intending her. It wanted to imply that Billy Piper somehow the Doctor to get the weird internet headlines, but isn't actually trying to tell that story. Who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong about that, but she wasn't credited as such in the credits and stuff like that. That I'm curious if, like, we're even going to get a new Doctor in that Christmas special. Will that
could just be David Tennant, because he's still around. The 14 still exists, yeah.
Yeah, that I'm just, like, very curious what that's going to be, because what I hope doesn't happen is that somehow Russell T Davies gets to cast the new Doctor and all that kind of stuff, and then somebody else is then handed that then they have to go make a show around. That whoever's the new showrunner, I'd rather that they get to invent whatever like version of the Doctor that they want to have, and I also don't want to have, Billy Piper's the Doctor for one episode, and then she regenerates at the end of that episode. Like, I don't need that shit anymore. It's like, I just want to have regular ass Doctor Who and have the person be on the show for at least about 3 years or 3 seasons worth of shows. And then if they want to move on from that point, they can move on. It's just like the weird, chaotic state the show has been in for so long is very frustrating, and I don't need to be on Doctor 18 or something by the time we get another proper season of the show.
I'm in complete agreement on that. I mean, yeah, I think the clean way to do this is if David Tennant is up for it and available, which, he's a busy guy. We'll see.
Yeah.
David, you can't just, like, ring the David Tennant bell. He's got to have time for it. But if David Tennant is up for it and available, I think you bring him in and have him be the Doctor in the special. And I think you have the nice reunion with Rose. You finish all of that. And then, like, maybe the plot of the episode is 14 and Rose are trying to rescue the next Doctor from this alternate dimension, and the end of the episode is new Doctor steps out of the TARDIS, but we don't see them, and cut to black. Something like that. Mm-hmm. Would that work, do you think?
I think it would work well enough. I mean, it's not, it's I don't think it's an ideal situation, but I don't think there's an ideal situation out of this, again, because of having to deal with the Billy Piper-ness of the whole thing. But yeah, that's kind of where my brain goes with it, as well as like the best you can do. But it's this Doctor Who stuff has just been very frustrating. But there is something about them at least saying, hey, we're going to have plans for a new series in, parentheses, not involving RTD, somebody new coming in. That at least gives me like some hope to cling on to. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe they will get a new person and it will be an absolute travesty, even worse than anything that's happened up till this point. And we'll get like 4 episode seasons and they're totally incompetently done. And they cast like a complete hack as the Doctor. I mean, it obviously can get even worse, but it could also get better. And I prefer to look on that side of things right now.
I mean, I really just like, I am glad to see that the BBC is committed to Doctor Who, which they should be, because like the Disney thing, it didn't work for Disney. It was still big. BBC themselves would fucking kill for the ratings Doctor Who was, getting the last couple of years. Doctor Who is a successful show. The thing is, Doctor Who does not need to be an insane big budget show. I think we've learned that. It was nice. We had some nice big budget episodes, but that's okay. Bring it in-house, make more episodes, make them cheaper. Just make Doctor Who again. That's all I want. Maduk-duk-ah, that's my hat that I'm wearing. Maduk-duk-ah. And yeah, we'll see. I am kind of fascinated to see what a crazy clusterfuck this 2026 Christmas special is going to be. And also, Ncuti Gatwa's decision to walk away, looking pretty good for him right now, because he would have been in the most insane limbo. He would have had to have, this would have been 2 to 3 years of not knowing. Like, that's insane if he had had to stick around. Like, man, it sucked for the show and for that character and that incarnation of the Doctor. But I think we have a very clear understanding of why he stepped away when he did, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we always do that. Like, it just felt like it sucked, but I think he was in such a situation that he really didn't have a different choice. Like, it would have been career suicide potentially to like shackle himself to the show that the streaming platform that was airing it was like trying to kill, basically, because they just didn't give a shit anymore. But a lot of respect for Gatwa. Like, I loved his incarnation of the Doctor. I wish his incarnation of the Doctor could have gotten a lot more than what he did, but you can't blame him for it.
All right, you want to move on to the stuff, Sean?
Yeah, let's talk about our stuff.
Well, my stuff outline is longer than yours, which is fine. But let's separate these out. I would like to. Can we just do some school story talk?
All right.
And if you want to mix any in, you are free to. But I think I have some fun stuff to talk about. First off, though, we're going to start dark so that we can lighten up. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
All right. AI bullshit is driving me crazy. Mm-hmm. I have now had to learn how to do the really just shitty process of having to report students for plagiarism at a university level because of AI stuff. And I've had to have talks with students about it who don't seem to understand the problem. I am increasingly, as an educator, I get, the educator marketing emails where I see all the people in my profession who are selling out their profession for AI money, like all the people who have PhDs, and I know how hard it is to get a PhD, who are now partnering with OpenAI and stuff and doing platforms with like Canvas or whatever the other education, or like McGraw-Hill, to be like, here's how to make ethical use of AI in the classroom, and I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm like, you should have your PhD revoked because you are a villain. And I don't know, it's making me a little crazy, Sean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, at the high school level, it's, I think, a little bit less stressful, just in the sense of like, there's such a sheer level of incompetence and they don't give a fuck-itness to it because they're 14-year-olds, right? At least, like, when it gets to your level, these are people who either themselves or their parents or someone is paying a lot of money for them to go to these classes. And there's a different valence, I think, that it gets at the college level for this AI stuff. For 14-year-olds, it's like, I'm giving them a very basic question, and they are throwing it into AI and coming back with answers that have, vocabulary terms such as magnanimous or the superficiality of whatnot. And it's like, okay, anybody could read this response and tell me that you didn't write it, or that any 14-year-old did not write this response. Like the voice of ChatGPT is the voice of a kind of obnoxious college freshman or sophomore.
Yes.
And so it's like, there's just no 14-year-old that certainly, not that's at like the level, like normal, regular English class level, that is writing these kinds of responses. The responses are usually wrong anyways.
Right.
We're even outside of like the vocabulary being like wildly inappropriate for their grade level, in terms of they're just not there yet. But so, I don't have any stress over like catching AI, because it's so clearly obvious. I've never had anything that felt like it was even a question mark, where someone was like, well, it might be or it might not be. That's never even approached it. And then also at my level, there's a lot less sort of need of having like, you don't need an official reporting process for plagiarism. You just give the kid a fucking 0. And if it's like a big problem, you maybe like that is a repeated behavior, even after you talk to them about it, you maybe get the parents involved. But it's like AI stuff at my level is definitely a problem, in that like kids are so willing to just jump to that as an easy out. But also kids at my level, if they weren't doing that, they would just be trying to copy off of their buddy's answer, or they'd just be going off of, if they could use the computer, go off of whatever the first results was in Google, which is half the time what they're doing anyways, and that's AI anyways nowadays. But it's like, I feel like at the high school level, at least at the schools that I'm teaching at, the AI stuff has not really fundamentally changed the behavior, because the behavior is so low level in terms of what they're trying to do and achieve. And it's just this kind of salve for their desire not to have to focus and do whatever the work is in front of them. But I imagine that at the college level, that gets a lot more severe.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, you went to CU Boulder. You remember we have a thing called the Honor Code?
Yes.
And the Honor Code at CU Boulder is posted in every room. There's a sign on the wall with it. It is on every blue book. Like if you take a test, you have to sign to the Honor Code. You have to say in your syllabus, you always have to have the Honor Code and like its whole thing written there. And I'm trying to find the exact language of it, but I can't find it online. But basically the Honor Code, one of the things it says is like, I have neither given nor received unauthorized assistance on this assignment. That is like one of the sentences in the Honor Code. And so I take it seriously. Increasingly, it feels like nobody else takes it seriously. But I remember like when I was a freshman at CU Boulder, and in orientation, they had people from the Honor Code office come talk to us. And one of the things they said is that a CU Boulder degree, part of why it is worth something is because we have the Honor Code. And because you can say, if you take your degree somewhere else, I went to a university that has this enforced Honor Code. And maybe it sounds cheesy, but I believe in that. I think that's good. I think it's good that we have that. I think it's good that it's posted in every room. I think it's good that we have this ideal to live up to. And I think it is shit that the university administration is trying to shit all over that with their cowardly approach to AI. And that is the thing. We live in a time of very widespread cowardice right now. Everyone is cowardly in every direction. If they have any modicum of power, they are cowardly to the current administration, and they are cowardly to, corporate interests. And it is appalling to me the way universities, not just mine, but all universities, have tolerated the AI stuff. It would not be hard to have a just blanket no AI policy. It should be the policy. And I think you could make it very workable. Like, people will always raise the but what about someone in Photoshop using AI to help erase out blah blah. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ChatGPT, which is not actually AI. Like, that's the other thing, is that we're not talking about actual artificial intelligence tools that use machine learning to help you with creative tasks, but just take out some of the in between steps. We're talking about the cheating. We're talking about the plagiarism. We're talking about the plagiarism engines that exist that are also killing our planet. And CU Boulder, you never get to talk to me about your Earth Day initiatives ever again, as long as you are tolerating students using ChatGPT. Seriously, fuck off with that. You do not believe in a single word you say if you are tolerating that, because these things are killing the planet. And it's that. We have no university-wide AI policy. Instructors are allowed to adopt any policy they want, and we are supported in that, but only to a point. And the fact that there's no strong-worded statement around this. We don't have any kind of university-level detector for it that we've bought and integrated into our systems, the way we have Turnitin, which is a plagiarism detector that is integrated. We can still agree plagiarism's bad, but we haven't done that for AI. Again, I just think that's cowardly to the nth degree, and it really does piss me off as an instructor, because when you say it's an individual, instructor's choice, you diminish our voice so heavily by not supporting us in it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think it's something that maybe people on the outside don't kind of fully understand the dynamics of how this works. But when it's for something that is a universal issue, that is not something that is something an individual teacher really has control or power over. You need a universal response to it, to give it power and to give it weight. It needs to be an administrative choice that is a universal campus policy. It's why, the approach at the high school level that was until this year with the new House bill in Texas around cell phones, the cell phone stuff was just horrible at the last school I worked at and this school I worked at until this year, because it is such a universal issue that every single student is doing. Every single student is trying to find a way to get around and abuse whatever cell phone policy that is being implemented, and asking each individual teacher to come up with their own individual policy to deal with it is not a reasonable method to manage that behavior. It's never going to be a reasonable method to manage that behavior. It needs to be a universal policy. That universal policy shouldn't have to be a fucking state law. It should be a thing talking about the cowardice that the district implements, and that the district says this is what our district is, this is our cell phone policy, and it must be enforced to this level. And there will be consequences for any individual campus that isn't implementing that policy. Less a consequence for the individual teachers, but more a consequence for the administration of that campus for not enforcing that policy and making their teachers fall through on it. That's the way it should work. And AI is the exact same way, and plagiarism is the exact same way. It is like, it's a thing that that the vast majority of the student body is going to push that boundary, because it's just the nature of the way that people behave. They're going to try to find the gaps. And if you leave it as a choice for individual teachers to design and enforce their own unique policy, you are creating a fucking Swiss cheese, net of gaps for students to try to exploit, and also making it incredibly difficult for any teacher to actually enforce their policy, because now students are going to come to you and they have learned the behavior from other professors or other teachers' classrooms that in this room it's okay to do this with AI, in that room it's okay to do this with cell phones, in this room it's not. Those students aren't learning in like an authentic, full behavior. They're not learning the actual rule set. They're trying to game the system and push the boundaries of each individual rule rather than building an ironclad wall that they cannot overcome, which is what should happen. And yes, like it's appalling that that it's not happening at AI, because you could see this coming from 5,000 miles away. As soon as LLMs and ChatGPT became like mildly well known, it's obvious that this is where the next frontier of plagiarism was, both in the sense of students using it to plagiarize, and also in the bigger sense of those companies plagiarizing everything that their fucking AI platforms are using in the first place to learn. They are machines that both give people an unprecedented level of ability to plagiarize, and are also machines that themselves have engaged in plagiarism on a level that humanity has never seen before. This is not a shocking twist that we're all of a sudden having to deal with. It is an obvious problem in the fact that administrations in education across the whole nation have not tried to confront it head on several years ago. Shows you how in the pocket of a lot of these big AI companies so much of our education system is.
And, the only thing that gives me any hope that this isn't an existential threat is because that bubble's about to burst. That's the thing.
Yes.
This is the thing that pisses me off when people are like, because the excuse you get from educators, and I've heard from other people in my field and in my department, is like, well, this is technology now, and, we got to give students the tools to learn how to live in a world with this. And I'm like, no, that's like saying we have to give the students the tools to live in a world with subprime mortgages in 2007. It's about to blow up. This is like the most underreported story right now. And I feel like Ryan Gosling at the beginning of The Big Short, he says everyone treats me like Chicken Little. And of course he's right. Is that the economy right now in the US is in a full-blown recession in every single sector except AI. AI is a bubble propping up the entire national economy. It is guaranteed to burst because that's what bubbles do. It is fake money running around in circles. None of these companies are profitable. It's the most classic bubble situation you could ever devise, but at a scale heretofore unforeseen. And when it bursts, 401ks are going to be wiped out. We are going to see huge unemployment. We're going to be in 2008 recession-style territory. It's going to be so bad. And all that AI stuff that you're teaching people to rely on is going to be gone in that sense. And if you're tying up your university's money in it, you're fucked. And it's that kind of short-termism of I'm not that old. I'm 33. I've seen this song and dance so many times. And it's what are we teaching people if we think yeah, this is going to be around forever and it's going to be just the same, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not. You're all idiots.
Yeah. And even if you're trying to teach people how to use it, it's garbage. It fucking sucks.
It sucks. Yeah.
I have multiple times tried to make an earnest attempt of let's see, let me create a scenario where it feels like this should work. And it never fucking does. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I've tried to a couple of times use it for well, this should be able to create a simple chart for me for my notes for an episode of Japanimation Station or something. And it's can you put together the cast list from this anime for me in a bulleted format that I can then edit, or something like that. Or the most recent one was when we were doing Space Runaway Ideon. And I was it would be really nice because Space Runaway Ideon does not have simple episode summaries on like the Wikipedia page that for me is like very useful when we're having a impromptu conversation about it. That's like, what the fuck was episode 31 about? Oh, I can look at that episode list and just look at like the couple of sentences of the summary. If they don't have it, that's when historically I've done summaries in my notes for episodes. But I don't want to have to do that. I would much rather just be able to have a simple episode summary that takes care of that for me, so I don't have to memorize all those things or create my own. And it couldn't even get anywhere close to doing that. It couldn't get the episode titles right. It couldn't get any of the details of any of the episodes right other than the first episode. It's just like, it had the number of episodes wrong. Like, it was so hilariously off in kind of every degree other than one or two spots. It was just like, I just was baffled because it felt like this is exactly the kind of thing that people tell me this tool should be good at. The kind of minor, dull, clerical task of taking notes or putting together a document that is not the thing that I actually want to do, which is like my detailed research and like put together my creative notes on my reactions to the episodes and stuff like that. This is a thing that would be a convenience if I could have it laid out on a Google Doc or a Word doc for me. That is a totally like kind of like secretarial style task. If I was like a super rich man with a secretary, I would just be like, hey, you go type all this shit up and it's going to take you an hour. And it's going to be the most boring thing in the world, but go do it. That's the kind of thing that feels like people tell me the AI should be good at, and it can't fucking do it. It's just, it can't do it at all. And it's just insane to me. I don't understand what people are trying to use AI for. I don't know why they think it's able to do it. And it's just, it is just insane. I just can't kind of fathom and wrap my head around the way in which people are so enthusiastic for this technology and act like it is able to give you huge productivity gains when it shows so clearly is the opposite. Like, you're dumping so much of your productivity by trying to find a way to use this tool and trying to work around its just like insane inability to actually give you anything that is accurate to a standard that you need it to be to do anything reasonable. That the only thing it can do is like shit that nobody should need it to do. Like, write a like stock email for you, where it's like, I don't need it to write a stock email because I can do that in fucking 10 seconds and it will be better than what this thing did. And then I just copy and paste that stock email every time I need to send that stock email. It's like the kinds of things that people use it for. I'm like, you could have done this faster in an easier way just by actually doing it. Like, I need it to do larger scale tasks that are actually mundane, not write a 6-sentence email that I can crank out in a fucking minute. It takes me longer to come up with the prompt I need to give it than I need to fucking write this goddamn email.
Totally. And like, yeah, the product sucks, and we know the product sucks. And this is also borne out in the data that like increasingly people are so aware that the product sucks that like usage of a lot of these tools has fallen off and is mostly relegated now to, like, if you look in the US, ChatGPT queries fall off in June, July, and August, because those are the months we don't have school in the US. Because most ChatGPT queries are just students who don't care if it's wrong because they're just doing it to skeeve off class, right? So like, you only use it for stuff you don't care about. And so, like, that is also part of what is insulting about getting someone using an AI assignment, is because it tells me they didn't care. But even if the product were good and had a reasonable level of accuracy, and in my field, film studies, it has a, like, 0 accuracy. Yeah. It's terrible at it. Particularly with any, as you were just talking about, foreign film or anything not in English, it has no idea. So, terrible. But let's say even if it were good, like, I had a conversation with a student who submitted an AI-generated assignment to me, and he genuinely didn't understand why what he did was wrong. He was not, I don't think he was trying to disrespect me. We had a good conversation, but he was trying to explain like his own like feelings of like inadequacy around writing and like feeling nervous about putting his thoughts together like this. And like what I had to try to break down to him, like, why am I actually giving you this assignment? And I said, and like, why does it matter to me that you don't use this? And I was earnestly trying to explain this. And I don't know if I got through to him, but I hope so. But like, on one level, I give them, for one, the actual tests that are worth a lot of their grade are handwritten in class in blue books on exam dates. I don't allow it. Like that, and I'm moving more towards that because it's AI proof. Handwriting is AI proof, which is great. But like in the lead up to that, we do have some like response post assignments, and they're literally the response post assignments are questions that I wrote for the exam and then took off the exam to give them as practice for the exam. So like on that level, definitely don't use AI to that, because then you're losing the practice that I am giving you for the actual time when you have to do it without that, right? But also, if your worry is that you're not as good at writing, you're never going to get better doing this. And I told him, I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need your response to be free of mistakes. I don't need it to be grammatically flawless. I want you to have flaws so that I can help you learn what they are and improve upon them. That's what this is for. This isn't me giving you busy work so that I can ignore you. This is me or my teaching assistants who have experience at doing this, giving you feedback. And you're not going to learn how to be a better writer without doing that. And I'm not going to be able to grade your work if I don't know it's you. And if it's erased what we can perceive are your actual flaws, it betrays the use of it in so many ways. And it just, and I also, I gotta say, I really fucking hate when people try to make this like an ableism conversation. Like, but it can help with people who have various learning disabilities. Fuck off. People have had disabilities for thousands of years. And we've been able to do it without allowing them to just cheat. Like, that is so insulting to people with actual, like, differences and disabilities to say that the only way we're going to be able to help them is to let them cheat on tests. And there's a whole culture of this in a lot of different ways in college that I think is really insulting to the disabled community. But, like, this is one that just, like, literally sets my eyes on fire.
Yeah, it's like definitely, at the high school level, we have things, the IEPs and 504s, which are like legally mandated. IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. So a student who has disability or something, this is their set of accommodations that they are provided. So if it's a student with like dyslexia or something like that, potentially it's like, okay, well, you have access to text-to-speech on your test, or you have the ability to have like notes provided for you that are like blank notes that you can fill in, stuff like that. That none of those accommodations should be, you can use ChatGPT to produce an answer for you. It's like the point of the accommodations is to make the content accessible. The point of the accommodations is not for them to do the work for you. It's like you're meant to be doing an equivalent amount of work as anybody else. You're just being given access to that work through those accommodations. So yes, like, and AI has not, at the high school level, partially because that stuff moves very slowly. I think it'll be a long time before anyone even tries to get into the 504 IEP kind of dynamic. And by the time that someone would be trying to get it there, I don't know if these products will even exist at that point anymore. But yes, I'm with you that that's bullshit. And it also resonates with me what you're talking about with that kid trying to use the AI to do their work. And it's just, it's a very fundamental problem with the American education system. And the thing I just despise about the way that the way our grading system works. And there's so much research about this, especially by the time they get to the high school level, and then even more so by the college level, any student who has bought into the American education system, which is going to be the majority of them, will have bought into a system about extrinsic rewards for what they're doing in school. That's like, I need to produce a product of this level so that I get a reward being my grade of this level. And it creates this sort of mindset that is kind of insane, where I think a lot of students have this sense that it's like, I need to produce a good product because that's what is needed, is a good product. And it's like, no, I don't need a good product from you. Like, I need to assure you that I do not need you to write a good essay about Romeo and Juliet and character analysis for Romeo and Juliet, because I need, personally, a really great breakdown of the analysis of Friar Lawrence. I'm not going to take that, I'm going to sell that somewhere or post it online. Like, I don't need that essay. That essay is not going to go anywhere. I don't find it, like, personally enjoyable and fulfilling just to read a bunch of essays about Friar Lawrence and Romeo and Juliet. Like, that's not what I'm getting out of this relationship. The whole point of this is for you to be given a task that is difficult, that is at the edge of your abilities to produce it, and you to do your best to try to do as well as you can on this task, so that way we can improve your ability to think critically, your ability to compose your thoughts in writing, your ability to analyze like an externalized piece of media or art outside of yourself. Like, we're trying to develop these things as an intrinsic process of training and development. But it's just like if someone, his mindset in going to do like a workout was, well, the point of this is I just need to produce as much sweat as possible because the world needs more sweat in it. So I just got to lift these fucking dumbbells. I got to run on this fucking treadmill because we just need all that goddamn sweat. And the more sweat I make, the better grade I get on my workout at the end of it. It's like that's
Sean,
the point.
The equivalent of that would be to say the thing I need out of my workout is like, how many times can the dumbbells be lifted? So I built a machine that will lift them for me, and I get to sit there and play video games. It's like, no, you missed the point, right?
Yeah, it's like this. We're doing this for intrinsic reasons, but yes, like that. It's just that mindset. Some kids are just so locked into it that trying to explain to them like a different way of seeing it, they just can't process it. Like it's so outside their worldview and how they've ever approached or thought about their education, because they've never really had a kind of metacognitive moment about their education once in their lives. They've just gone through the routine because that's what the routine has always been. And it's like the idea is just so alien to them. They can't get their minds around it. And it's really sad when you see it. And it's with most kids that they just can't really grasp the notion that the point of this is for your benefit, that it's not because I need essays from you. It's that thing where it's like, I understand why they see the world this way. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but it is just crazy the way they see these things. And for me, it's just very sad when you're trying to break through that and you just can't do it.
No, Sean, this is funny. This is actually what I tell my TAs when we're talking about grading, is that like, these don't exist for you to read and get something out of them. These exist for them to write and get something out of the process of writing them, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I care about, is seeing that. And that is an adjustment you have to learn as a teacher and a grader that allows you to understand this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last thing here, just to make you laugh, Sean. One of the students I had to do a report on. So in the prompt of the response post, I tell them, please make, a specific citation of this reading from our textbook. And that's also because the response post exists to make sure they're doing the readings, right?
Yeah.
And I guess when they gave this to ChatGPT, this was the giveaway that was so funny, is that it referred to the textbook every time in that response as the sacred text. It kept saying, according to the sacred text. Like it was the Bible or something.
I mean, to be fair, Jonathan, that sounds like something you would have written in high school sarcastically as a way to make fun of a teacher that was overly precious about the book we were reading.
It does, but it wasn't. See, there was no sarcastic bite to it. It was just an otherwise straightforward ChatGPT response that, instead of referring to film art by Bordwell and Thompson, was the sacred text.
The sacred text.
Oh my God! All right, I have a couple other school stories to tell. One of which being in my class that I've been teaching on Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, the Studio Ghibli founders, which has been an awesome class. It's my favorite class I've taught so far in my life. I think it's turned out really well. Surprise, surprise. It is something I am pretty knowledgeable about. But I did an experiment where Studio Ghibli fans might know the fun bit of trivia that My Neighbor Totoro by Miyazaki and Grave of the Fireflies by Takahata originally debuted in Japan as a double feature in 1988. And that is how they were originally shown to audiences. And all involved agreed it was a bad idea because that just weirded people out. And those movies didn't do so well at the box office back then, because if you've seen those movies, you know why they are an objectively bizarre double feature to do.
Yeah.
And so, but I decided for history, for experience, we had a 3-hour screening block. I did it as a double feature. And I was like, I want to see if this works. I want to see if they tolerate it. I want to see if it's an interesting thing that produces an interesting conversation. Also because those are films many of them were likely to have seen before. So this prompts us to see them in a new light. And so we did it. We showed Grave of the Fireflies, took a 5-minute break, showed My Neighbor Totoro. And at intermission, I had the closest basic I've ever come to having a panic attack while teaching, because at the end of Grave of the Fireflies, Sean, about half my class was full body sobbing. And I'm not... I'm not exaggerating. I've been doing this as a student, since 2011, as some kind of teacher since 2015, 2018. as a full like professor since, 2 years now, I've never seen a classroom in any form have a reaction to a movie as strong as they had to Grave of the Fireflies. Like that movie, and I understand it. Grave of the Fireflies is one of the most viscerally upsetting movies you will ever see. But it fucked people up. I felt like, and sometimes you have to drill this out of yourself as a film teacher, is remind yourself you didn't make the movie. You are not responsible for the content of the film, unless you like sprung it on them with no build-up. But I didn't do that. I talked a lot about the history behind it and everything. And I was like, oh God, is this going to work? Are they going to engage with Totoro at all? But Totoro comes on, and basically by the time May is following the little Totoros in the backyard to go meet Big Totoro, people started laughing, and then I kind of breathed again. And then the discussion was actually very rich. It was the best discussion we'd had in that class so far. I asked people directly, I said, you can tell me this was a bad idea. This is my first time teaching this. I want to know what you think of the double feature. And a lot of people said they actually felt it was valuable. A lot of people said that they were glad they got to watch Totoro afterwards because it kind of helped them come up after Fireflies. And so I was like, I don't know if I will have the constitution to teach it this way again, but it was not a bad idea I learned on my part. But I did think it was an interesting experiment because for a while there it felt rocky to me.
Yes, I mean, it definitely makes sense that you need to do Fireflies first and the Totoro afterwards, because I think it would be very, very hard to have a conversation about My Neighbor Totoro immediately after having watched Grave of the Fireflies.
I have a quote from Takahata himself who said that this was the thing that happened when they showed them in the double feature, was that people walked out of Fireflies if it was shown second, but if Totoro was shown second, people were okay with it. But the problem is they couldn't control that. Theaters decided which order to show the prints in.
Yes, because yes, I could kind of see the contrast working that way, but not the other way.
Yes, yeah. Because Totoro gets you in such a good mood, and then the first line of Grave of the Fireflies is, "This is the day I died," and you watch the main character keel over and die in an empty train, platform. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little hard to swallow after, coming face to face with the horrors of the cat bus.
I did tell them about your whole thing with the cat bus, because everyone else on Earth loves the cat bus. And I said, my buddy Sean, he respects My Neighbor Totoro, but he's never been able to fully get into it because of the cat bus. And I explained it to them, and they're like, they all thought it was very funny.
It's just imagine it. Just imagine reaching around the window well and grabbing onto the fleshy fucking, whatever it is that you could just feel your fingers all the way through the other side. It's gross. This just tiny little patch of flesh that you're sitting inside of. Ugh.
I think it's adorable. All right. I also, in my media convergence sort of class, we've been doing some weeks that are very on topic for this show, Sean. We did do a week. We're talking now about sort of media convergence in Japan, and we're about to do a week on a full-on like isekai week where we're going to watch Sword Art Online and stuff like that.
Sick.
But we've been building up to that. We did a week on Digimon. And I showed them, for the anime, I showed them the second Digimon movie. It's the Hosoda Mamoru movie, Our War Game, which is phenomenal film. And also, like, very clearly a precursor to his film Summer Wars and whatnot. And then we played...
For listeners at home, just to clarify for that one, if you have not seen the Japanese version, that is the really good stretch of the American Digimon, the movie, where it's the main characters from Digimon Adventure 1 coming together after the end of that show, having to fight Diabolomon, who is in the, like, World Wide Web, and where War Greymon and Metal Groovemon fuse into Alphamon for the first, or Omnimon for the first time.
And if you haven't seen any Digimon, but you've seen Summer Wars, it's Summer Wars, but half as long with Digimon.
Yes.
That's what it is. And which is great. I mean, Hosoda, reuse a good idea when you have it, man. It's awesome. But anyway, then we did play Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. It has now been in a class at the University of Colorado. And if I do it again, I'm going to have to rethink how to do that, because I forgot just how, like, Persona 4 style long the intro to Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is. And in the time we had, we didn't really get into the meat of the game, which is fine, but they got a sense for it, because that game also, its visuals are so in that kind of Hosoda territory of how it shows the digital world, and we had a good conversation about it. But yeah, that was fun. And then we had a week on Dragon Ball, where I think and I still think in theory this was a great idea, where we were studying the, kind of the difference between form and content. And what I did is I isolated the Trunks backstory. So you have the original chapter that is a bonus chapter in Toriyama's manga where he explains, it's the chapter where it shows Gohan dying, Trunks deciding to go to the past, all that. So we read that, then we watched the Trunks special from DBZ, which is great. It's 48 of the best minutes of Dragon Ball. That special is so well directed. Oh my god. That's got one of the Super Saiyan transformation in that episode is perfect. And also it has the funniest placement of an eye catch, I think, in anime history, which is after Gohan dies and Trunks goes Super Saiyan with tears in his eyes, there's a just sudden cut into da 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 da, and it made everyone laugh, and I loved it. And then we played the Trunks DLC from Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Yeah. And so we did manga, anime, game. That's a good idea, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the problem. I didn't rehearse the DBZ Kakarot game enough. I'd played a good amount of the base game at this point. That DLC is such a ludicrous difficulty spike from anything that I'd played so far. Me and several kids in the class, we couldn't get very far in it. Like, the first fight is training with Gohan, and he can just basically wipe you. He can stun lock you and wipe you out if you make one mistake. Just, you're fucked. And, like, we even had someone else in there who had played way more of Kakarot than I have, and was really good at it, who, at a certain point, we never got to, like, fighting the android. We got a little bit. There was, like, one scene where you fight them and you have to escape. But we never got that far. Like, far enough that they could see how it was recreating the anime and we could get a sense of the game mechanics. But, like, man, what the fuck? It was just ludicrously difficult.
This is interesting. I don't remember it being hard, but I also played it after replaying the main game. So I think if you're not kind of... Because it's definitely... Those DLCs are... for, like, they're gauged for, like, you have internalized the full mechanics of that game. And the mechanics of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot are very unique to that game. Like, you have to have, like, really played it and kind of understood what it's doing, because there's not a lot you're carrying over from other video games you've played. So I can see how, like, if you have not really, like, thoroughly gone through it and really internalized the mechanics, that maybe the DLC would be a pretty hard step up.
Yeah, it's the rare time where it made me feel good at Dragon Ball FighterZ, because I also showed them that game, and I can beat the computers in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Like, if you just set up a normal match CPU, I can beat this computers. If I went online, I probably couldn't win much there. But, like, and I don't feel like I'm good at Dragon Ball FighterZ, but I can at least do that. And then Kakarot, I felt so humiliated. And we haven't had our discussion on that one yet, but I'm excited to see what that is. But, man, what an experience.
It's just going to be a bunch of fucking college freshmen dissing on your gamer skills and just mocking you horrifically. You need to bring up the story about you playing through all of Red Dead Redemption without ever knowing you could buy things from the store, just to show that it's not a new thing, you being terrible at video games.
The real problem is, Sean, I am pretty good at certain video games. I get really bad at video games if I have to be talking or doing anything else while playing them. Other than, like, I can listen to a... Okay, here's... Because I've had this a couple times in this class, because there's a lot of difficulties with teaching video games. Part of it is just, like, pedagogically, the classroom for film studies is not laid out in an ideal way for video games. Like, our screening times and lengths, and just the fact that I can't... There's no, like, way for me to set it up for everyone to have an equal experience with it, because I would need a console for everybody and a controller, and everybody would have to be willing to try it out, right? So, like, there's a lot of difficulties, but so the usual setting of showing a video game in a screening period is me playing it and them watching, and me offering to let other people play, but often they don't want to because they don't want to feel humiliated in front of their friends, and so I get humiliated, and I had... a hardcore PTSD flashback on Thursday, Sean, when we were doing the Dragon Ball game, to when you and I tried doing the Let's Play of Super Mario 64. Is that what you were thinking of?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
You describe it. I've blacked out my memories of all that.
Well, yeah, because we did the Let's Play where I played through Halo, and I thought that was very fun. And then we moved on to, because the idea was we would go back and forth, and then you were trying to do Super Mario 64. And it was specifically the first Bowser level where you just had, like, a fucking meltdown. Like, you just couldn't do it. And it's just that, like, classic heated gamer moment of where, like, you're so in your own head about failing to do this thing, that then it just makes you worse and worse at it. It's like when you're playing Call of Duty online and it's like you just like get, you know, you lose really bad or something, and you just start blaming the game. It's like, oh, this motherfucker's just camping and blah blah blah, and you just get like, you're externalizing this internal frustration to such an extent that it just spirals madly out of control. But it was interesting because it was just you playing the game. It wasn't caused by like you losing a game that someone else is against you. It was like the frustration that you were struggling at a game you knew you could play really well, but because you were also trying to talk and do these things at the same time, it just created this spiral, and it was very interesting to see up close.
Like this is where like I don't understand Twitch streamers, because I couldn't do it. I just fundamentally, it's a skill set I do not have, because like the situation you just described, I don't have that kind of game performance anxiety. I'm very good at Call of Duty Online. I don't get that like you lose one game and then you get really bad at it. Sometimes maybe with like a Dark Souls boss where you need to just cool off before you come back to it. But like that's not where I get in my head about it. It is when I have to like talk or perform over the game, like in a Let's Play setting or in a teaching setting. It's like whatever skill layer exists between me and the game, and it'll be between games I am very good at. Like Mario 64, I've beaten more than any other game in my life. I can play Mario 64, I promise. Or like I was showing them Resident Evil, the original 2002 GameCube remake earlier this year, and I fucked up at one point. I like couldn't figure, and it's like I know that game inside and out. I've beaten that game like 3-4 times. I'm good at Resident Evil, but it's just like when you add on that performance layer, and this is where I just fundamentally do not understand people who can like have in-depth conversations with their Twitch stream while playing a game. And maybe I actually could be very successful at it in a comedy, everyone's dunking on me sort of way, but in terms of if I were trying to show off my skills with a Z, I couldn't do it.
Yes, you wouldn't be getting some sick 360 no-scope headshots and putting together your compilation video on YouTube. Yeah.
All right. One more school thing I wanted to talk about, Sean, is I'm planning my spring semester now because I know what I'm teaching. And I wanted to share a couple things with you. One, I am very happy. I found a way to have an Orson Welles trifecta in my classes. And I think that's pretty cool because I have 3 classes and we're showing a different Orson Welles movie in all 3. And I'm proud of that. Citizen Kane is a standard in my intro to film class because it's Citizen Kane. I just believe, look, Moses came down from the mountain, from Mount Sinai. He had the 10 Commandments, and he had the missing 11th one, which was "Thou shalt show Citizen Kane" in an intro to film class. And I'm a believer.
And then below that, he had the 12th one, which is "Thou shalt read/watch Romeo and Juliet in your high school English class." Yeah,
exactly. So we've got that there. I'm teaching film theory, intro to film theory, and for the week on auteur studies, I had an idea that, like, you know what would actually be really interesting to talk about with auteur studies is The Magnificent Ambersons, because it's this famous movie that was robbed from him. The version we have, and we have no access to a longer version, is cut, but it is still clearly, like, not just an Orson Welles movie, but one of the great Orson Welles movies. So, like, what do we do with that? And I think that brings up an interesting conversation about directorial intent and all this. And I just think it's a great movie that not enough people have seen. So there we go. That's 2. And then I have a 3rd class that's called Form, Structure, and Narrative Analysis, which is sort of like an in-between, like, Intro to Cinema Part 2, where we, like, just go deeper on topics of those things, of structure, narrative, all that stuff. And we're going to do some weeks on documentary film and like documentary structure. And at that point, just immediately, I just pull F for Fake off the shelf and put it in there because, that's the one, right? And so I have a Wells trifecta next semester, and I'm happy about that. I think that's cool.
Very good. And if I like that you've just set that up for yourself.
Yeah.
Because, I guess it's possible that some students will be taking multiple of those classes, but you're the one who just gets to watch the 3 Orson Welles movies and just get to enjoy that.
Look, sometimes you've got to put ones on there for yourself. You just know there are points in the semester where you're going to need to sit down and watch an Orson Welles movie, right?
Absolutely.
And you need that for you. Speaking of which, but because of this, I'm also planning for the Form, Structure, Narrative Analysis class. I was thinking a bit, I really like talking about narrative structure. And I like talking about 3-act structure, and I thought, it would be fun to do like a week on different kinds of structure, or a unit, so like over 3 weeks. And I thought we could do a 3-4-5 thing, where we have Hollywood 3-act, go deep on that. We do Asian, like Kisho Tenketsu, right? The 4-act, right? And then we do Shakespearean 5-act, because these are all, what I think is interesting about those divisions is that they can all describe the same thing, but in different ways. But
Yes.
there are also meaningful distinctions between them, right? And especially if you pick the right films to illustrate it, it could be really fun. So I actually asked for your advice, Sean, off the air on the Shakespearean 5-act, because I said, I don't think I can probably show two Welles films in this class. What's a really good non-Orson Welles Shakespeare movie? And you gave me a couple suggestions. And one I watched, because I had actually just picked it up at a used DVD store, was the 1953 Julius Caesar by Herman J. Mankiewicz with Marlon Brando as Mark Antony. And I just watched that last night, Sean, and it is now a shoo-in for that syllabus.
Yeah.
That movie fucking rules. Why does no one talk about that one? I feel like that's a lesser, not regarded, but it doesn't get spoken of as much. That is, I think, the best Shakespeare film I've ever seen that isn't by Welles.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's either that or it's the Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet would be my two picks for the best non-Welles Shakespeare movies.
At least using the original language. Obviously, there's stuff like Ron and Throne of Blood, but yeah.
Yeah, that gets more complicated. But yeah, something that is like a direct adaptation of the actual text. I think part of the reason why it's not as well known is just because Julius Caesar is not as well known, or it's not as done as his other stories, right? It's well known in the sense that there's a lot of stuff from Julius Caesar that's very famous, like Beware the Ides of March, obviously, is one of the most famous.
So this was actually, Sean, my first time ever seeing Julius Caesar, the play, in full. And I didn't know how many quotes are from Julius Caesar. Yes. To the degree that there's just things that are just part of our forms of speech in modern English that come from that play that I didn't even. It's crazy. I also think that's one of his best plays. That play fucking rules. It is dramatically so tight.
Yeah, and it's that also one of those things where I think people are always surprised that Julius Caesar dies so early in the play. I think you have this because it's called Julius Caesar, you expect it to be about Caesar, when it's about Brutus, Cassius, and Mark Antony are actually the main characters of the play. But yeah, I think it's just not as a well-known movie because that play's not as well-known. I feel like of Shakespeare's histories, for whatever reason, Henry V and Richard III are the ones that kind of keep coming up. Well, for whatever reason, Henry V, partially because it's very nationalistic, so it's got that kind of the UK really likes Henry V because it does all those things for them. And then obviously both those plays are very good, although honestly I'm not huge into Henry V. I don't think it's all that interesting amongst his histories. I think
Henry IV Part 1. Henry IV Part 1.
Absolutely.
You and I are on that train.
Those are way better. And yeah, but Julius Caesar, it's a great play. I remember when I was doing debate class, my last school, we looked at the Friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears, I come to bury Caesar not to praise him, that whole soliloquy by Mark Antony. We looked at that as a fantastic example of rhetoric, of the ways in which Mark Antony in that speech gets everybody on his side while slowly laying these little barbs about Caesar was a man of ambition and all this thing of the justification the assassins gave for killing Caesar, and then he slowly twists that around until he rallies them into this big mob on his side. It's one of the great speeches in Shakespeare's plays, and one of the best things about that movie is fucking Marlon Brando as Mark Antony is so, because it's primo fucking Streetcar Named Desire era Marlon Brando when he was young and super hungry and intense, and he had he himself clearly had a lot of ambition in his acting and was just changing the world of American acting and film around him. And it's it's just right in that period of his career. But it's that in a Shakespearean performance, which I think is just very fascinating because he's not a traditionally Shakespearean styled actor. He never was, even after that point. But he just fucking kills it. He's so good in that movie.
He's so good. I mean, part of why I've also decided Julius Caesar is the right movie for this part of my class is that the Shakespearean 5-act structure, one of the things that defines it is that there is a climax in the middle in Act 3, right? And Julius Caesar is maybe the most obvious one in the entire Shakespeare canon because it's Caesar dies. In the movie, it's 55 minutes into a 2-hour movie, so it's right at the middle. And then the other half of Act 3 is those dueling soliloquies and the political addresses at the funeral. And so, it's just such a teachable version of, what makes this different from, 3-act, right? But also the build to that, because Mark Antony isn't a character in the first hour. He's there, you see him, but he's mostly talked about, but he's off screen. And then he comes in and he has his first conversation with all of the assailants where he's just trying to make sure they won't kill him, basically. Then they leave, and he has the soliloquy that ends with, cry havoc and call the dogs of war, that whole thing. And you realize how angry he is. And then he comes out for the speech. And what Marlon Brando understands about that soliloquy is that he is doing politics as warfare there. He is coming out to fucking kill these guys with his words, but not make it clear he's doing that. And so it is one of the most brilliant pieces of Shakespearean writing, but when you have the right actor doing it, and Marlon Brando just so to his core knows what that scene needs to be, it's like edge of your seat thrilling stuff.
Yes, and that first scene with him where he's standing over Caesar's body and then all the other men leave and he gets his big cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war speech, it's so good. And when the camera pulls out when he's building up to saying cry havoc, and when he shouts out the word havoc, it feels like it shakes the fucking set. It's so intense. It's such a great piece of like that of I think of what a lot of Shakespeare movies, one of the problems they have is that they try to get too far away from the theatricality of those kinds of moments, where you need to feel those soliloquies as being this kind of internal process the character is going that's really raw and emotional, being purely externalized. And so this big over-the-top crazy thing where the camera pulls way out, it goes like way up into the ceiling looking down on him, and he just belts out that line at the top of his lungs. It's just the kind of thing that I think a lot of those sorts of movies don't want to do with those kinds of performances, and that movie just leans way into it.
It does, and this is part of why I just think like that era of Hollywood is also perfect for this, because the sets are wonderful, but they are also like sets. They're on a soundstage. They're theatrical. It allows them to do that. Mankiewicz directs the fucking hell out of that movie. It is so... One, he finds a lot of places for silence, which I think too many Shakespeare films become wall-to-wall dialogue, and I understand why, but like you need also moments where characters just sit with things. Like I also was glancing through the text while watching it, and like there's moments where like they just remove lines that are redundant, because if it's something that like the set can show you, it's okay to cut the line. Like, you know, unless it's like a particularly poetic turn of phrase. Because, not everything Shakespeare wrote was perfect gold. Sometimes you can just cut a line that was functional, right? But all of that is great. And then I also think like the kinds of actors who existed in Hollywood in the 50s are just so perfect for that play. Like James Mason as Brutus, who like was more of a character actor kind of guy. Like they put the guy with the movie star energy, Marlon Brando, in the Mark Antony role, which makes sense because Mark Antony is the movie star of that play. But like Brutus is like the quiet guy on the side who reluctantly becomes the center of this universe. James Mason's perfect for that. And then the one British actor in the cast is John Gielgud as Cassius. And I think having the one British guy be Cassius, who is the silver-tongued devil of the play, adds so much to that. And Gielgud, oh God, he's good in that movie. Oh God.
Yeah. I mean, and John Gielgud, like he's like, right next to Olivier as like one of like the great Shakespearean style actors of the 20th century. So he's like, you don't get much more Shakespeare-y than Gielgud in that period. And it is like, it makes a lot of sense that Cassius would be the character that you need this, like, we want this like super old school traditional Shakespearean actor of like the highest quality playing that specific character in that play.
Yeah. So anyway, that movie kicks ass, and I can't wait to watch it again when I use this in my class. The other thing I wanted to ask you here, Sean, and maybe we can do a little bit of live brainstorming, is I need to figure out what film I'm going to use for the Kisho Tenketsu week, because I really love teaching that. I think it's a really interesting idea, and I have a whole list of movies I could use. There's a lot you could do. Like, honestly, the first one when I was brainstorming, I started writing down movies, is I wrote down Mugen Train, the Demon Slayer movie, because that one is it's a perfect Kisho Tenketsu, particularly because the arrival of Akaza makes the structure so clear.
Yes.
But it also can map onto Hollywood 3-act in a way that teaches you how these things can be a little interchangeable. But I've listed a bunch of other ones. Like, I thought about, like, Rashomon is one that fits for this, although I think it has so many other narrative things going on, it would distract from the structural issue if you're teaching it. There's other, like, basically every Hayao Miyazaki movie is a very clear Kisho Tenketsu. Spirited Away is one I was thinking about. I don't know if you have any ideas. Like, I'm open to anything.
Oh no, I mean, for me, I don't know if how well this would work in that format, but when I think of Kisho Tenketsu being like very clear, one of the places my mind goes to is the Zatoichi movies because, or any movies of that style, because, those movies that they made like one every 6 months or so for several years. You could do like the first Zatoichi movie. It's very clear there, because it's just like a very straightforward use of that story structure that's not trying to do anything super fancy. But like the first Satoichi movie has all the stuff with the samurai who's sick. That is what the kind of the 10 element of the plot revolves around, where he is not initially seemingly all that involved in, especially from Ichi's perspective, the main plot of the movie involving the Yakuza gang. And it's only at the ending that all those things come together and he has to duel this guy on the bridge. That's a great scene. I think for Kurosawa, I think one of the most interesting ones for that would be High and Low. I think has like a really powerful Kisho Tenketsu. That's a long movie, but I think that would be one that like uses it really clearly with the how much the style of the movie shifts when they go out of the high section into the low section. I think that's another interesting one.
High and Low, I agree with completely, but I do already use that in intro to teach mise-en-scène because it's got the greatest blocking in film history.
Yes.
And I'm keeping that in intro because it works so well to teach mise-en-scène. But yeah, Zatoichi is a good idea, and I do have that criterion set now. And I've seen the first one. I need to go back and watch it again. And any excuse to watch Zatoichi sounds like a good excuse, but yeah, if you think of anything else, let me know, or if listeners think of anything else, because, but I like that idea. That could definitely work. And I'm also like, as you can see, like one of the things I want to do with like the 3, 4, 5 is be open to showing big popular films, because I want them to think about this in terms of we're not talking about like weird academic, like experimental films here. We'll get to that later in the semester. We're talking about what makes a good like commercial piece. And Shakespeare is also that. I want to stress, like Shakespeare, you're used to reading it in class, but like Shakespeare wrote this to like, for big audiences at the Globe Theater or something, right? Like they were popular works. Like for 3 act, I'm just going to show Star Wars. Because fuck it, there's no better one, and then you also get to talk about Joseph Campbell and the myths and all that stuff, right? Yeah. I would be resistant to that in other settings, but like when you can show a really popular movie is when you can show it for a specific, very teachable reason that they haven't thought of before. And I did just download one of the mini fan 4K restorations of Star Wars, so I can show the actual movie in good quality.
There you go. Yeah, I think, so in that vein, Zatoichi actually works quite well, just as being like, this is, of like a very popular genre at the height of that genre's popularity in Japan, where they're making just 1 billion of these fucking movies.
Yes.
And then obviously it spawned a series of like 25 something movies.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing of like, this is going to sound like an insult, and I don't mean it at all, but it does not have the extra like crazy out there stuff like a Rashomon or an Ugetsu that like would also technically work, but I think have these extra layers that make them more sort of rich film texts, but less teachable for this specific thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Rashomon in particular, like, it would be weird to teach that for Kisho Tenketsu and not for, like, the subjective point of view stuff, which is so clearly, like, the thing about that movie. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying.
Yeah. All right, well, I've been talking for a while. We can move over to talk about games and movies and stuff, Sean, but I'll let you pick something off your list first, since I've been going here.
All right, I'll talk about, since we're talking about a lot of movie stuff, I'll talk about a movie I watched very recently, because I watched it for Halloween, because Halloween was on a Friday, which means I actually got to do something Halloween-related, because it wasn't on, like, a regular school night. So I finally got to watch Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers movie, which originally came out December last year. And I kind of just been sitting around waiting for good time to watch that movie. And Halloween, I mean, there's no better time than that to watch a vampire movie. And I've seen all of Robert Eggers' other movies. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, like working director today. And Nosferatu is just incredible. I mean, what a fucking amazing movie. If people have not seen it, it's so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Like one of the best vampire movies, as good a version of Dracula as you could ask for. And if you're hearing that, like, well, what do you mean version of Dracula? It's called Nosferatu, right? So Nosferatu obviously is originally your silent film movie directed by F.W. Murnau in the 1920s, which is where you get Count Orlok, and it's like, one of the most visually iconic of all the silent movies. There's a lot of images from that film that survive today, including the image of Count Orlok himself. But Nosferatu is just one of the early adaptations of Dracula to film that changes the setting and a lot of the names to be German, but is basically the plot of the first section of the Dracula novel, where Jonathan Harker in the book goes up to Count Dracula, and they just change the names in some of the plot points, but it's basically that. It's the part of Dracula that everyone thinks about when they think about Dracula, which is just that opening stretch of the book where you visit Castle Dracula. This movie, one thing that's interesting about it is that it is, bringing in those things. So it brings in the setting from that silent movie. It brings in the changed names, all that kind of stuff. But it is much more an adaptation of Dracula, the book, in the sense of that it is bringing in lots of things from that book that do not happen in the original Nosferatu movie. And so it is, very much a Dracula adaptation. But what it gets to do, because it's not literally named Dracula, I think it really frees the movie up to take a totally different approach. One of the things really interesting about it is its approach to depicting vampires and vampirism is thematically very in line with Dracula. It's thematically very in line with the literary vampire of the Victorian period, which is all about the ways in which the vampire is this monstrous, grotesque expression of the oppressed elements of the Victorian society and the paranoid fears of Victorian society. So the vampire is very sexual. It's very divergent. It preys on women and it preys on children at night. It is also foreign, and so that's one of the big elements of the vampire in Dracula, is that it's about this foreign creature coming in at the dark of night, targeting our women, trying to kind of undermine the pillars of the British Empire. The original Dracula book is written at the end of the century, at the end of the Victorian period, as the British Empire is entering this phase of kind of decay, and this fear possesses a lot of the Victorians, that because the empire has expanded so far, it encompasses so many people who are not, from their perspective, British, and look different, have different cultures, have different skin color. And so a lot of the original novel and the use of Dracula in that book is playing on those fears and those paranoias. And Nosferatu, this movie, is doing a lot of that. And obviously a lot of those themes are still hugely relevant today, which is one of the reasons that the movie works really well. But one of the big changes the movie makes is it depicts the vampire not like Dracula, not like the literary Victorian vampire, which is very much like the Anne Rice vampire that's very sexualized. They're kind of perfect. They're very hypnotic and mesmerizing. And in Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers movie, the vampire is intentionally depicted as a folkloric vampire. It's pulling from pre-Victorian sources of the idea of the Nosferatu, or the vampire, being a living corpse, a body that was buried inappropriately that has come back to life and preys on the living. And so the way that Count Orlok is depicted in the movie is as this grotesque creature that looks more like something out of The Witcher 3 than looks like something out of what you'd normally think of as vampires. It's just pulling from that Eastern European folkloric tradition, and it just lends it such a different energy. But they're still combining it with the thematic elements from Dracula. So they're still making it this monstrous, grotesque version of sexuality and the oppressed elements of the Victorian psyche, and having, obviously the Mina Harker character, she's called something different here, but Mina, who is the true protagonist and the actual main character of the Dracula book, and it's all about her relationship to Dracula, her relationship to this unseen world, of being this woman who obviously has all these repressed elements because of the patriarchal society in which she exists. This movie pulls on all of those themes, but I think by depicting the vampire as something so outwardly monstrous and grotesque, so extreme, like this shambling, weird, spindly corpse-like creature, it just, I think, makes it even more potent, the ways in which the Mina character, I'm just going to use the Dracula names because it's a lot easier for me off the top of my head. The Mina character, the Dracula character being an expression of her repressed sexuality and all these things, that also takes this tinge of sexual assault that they kind of add in there, in the sense of that she is someone who has been so oppressed and so kind of abused in her past that she has fled to this vampire psychically as an outlet for all of those feelings. And because those feelings come from such a dark, violent place, the expression it takes inevitably is going to be dark and violent and twisted and malevolent. And that's so much of what you get visually in the movie. And I think that that's absolutely just fantastic and a great kind of recontextualization and new way of visualizing these kind of timeless themes and elements from the original book. There's so much in the movie that's incredible. Obviously, the cinematography, the editing of the movie is just gorgeous and so powerful. He uses this very tall frame, which is really interesting. And particularly in the first section of the movie. Yes, go ahead. You can give the actual dimensions.
It's 166:1, which is the best aspect ratio. It's European widescreen. This is my dumbest hobby horse, which is that is the best aspect ratio, and more people should use it. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yes, but it's a much taller frame than you get from conventional widescreen.
Yes.
And he uses that space so well, particularly in the first kind of half or so of the movie, that adapts, again, like the most famous part of the book, everybody's favorite part of Dracula, and inevitably the best part of Dracula, which is Jonathan Harker going to Castle Dracula and encountering Dracula for the first time. There's a reason why so many adaptations of Dracula historically just did that part, because it's so fucking good. Like, it's ridiculously good. And it's so good in this movie because Eggers uses these, like, oppressively almost symmetrical compositions so heavily, where he puts the main subject, usually the character, right in the center of the frame, and has these compositions that are really close to being symmetrical, but are almost always off in just very slight ways. And it's so thorough, and so there's such attention to detail to every single frame, and especially as the Jonathan Harker character gets closer and closer to the castle and deeper into the Romanian woods and into this sort of other world that is ruled by the vampire. That style gets more and more intense and more dreamlike and bizarre. And that tall frame starts to be used to create these really claustrophobic compositions. It's just such a meticulously shot movie. It's really gorgeous. And every performer, all the actors just look great in this movie with those shots where you just see like every kind of like crevice on their face, and you just get this great sense of like the makeup and the costuming and the sets and all the digital extensions and that kind of stuff they do just all hold up so well to these very exacting compositions. It's gorgeous. And then in the second half of the movie, where it really focuses in on the Mina character, and then you also get Willem Dafoe who's playing a character not from the original Nosferatu movie, but is an adaptation basically of Van Helsing from the book. And so Willem Dafoe, who's obviously been in several of Eggers' earlier movies, gets to play this crazy version of Van Helsing, which is fantastic, and really goes deep into some of my favorite stuff from the book of where this sort of sense of the Victorian world that is ruled by what, from our perspective, in a modern sense, is a very primitive understanding of science, and a world in which science is used as a cudgel with which to beat oppressed peoples, right? Like, science is used as a cudgel to reinforce racist archetypes and stereotypes. And there's all the like racial sciences of the time, like physiognomy. It's also used to repress women. And you have like the notion of hysteria and women going to hysterics and all that kind of stuff come from this period. And so science and the scientific method is used to create a justification for the ways in which you control people in society. This is true in many ways today. Look at all of our AI stuff, but it's very, very true of the Victorian period, of this period of how science is used. And so there's this great sense of bringing in these like older pagan spiritual kind of mystical traditions. That Van Helsing's whole thing is he's a combination of the best of what the scientific world produces, but he's also the best of what the like emotive, psychic world produces, with this kind of older way of thinking, and bringing those two elements together in this one kind of composite character of Van Helsing, and Mina, who is a character who is deeply connected to this more spiritual world, ties into all of those things as well. And so I think the way the movie plays all of that here is really fantastic. I think it's got a great read on how those themes play out in the book. And then the conclusion of the film and Mina's final confrontation with the vampire, and I think what that says about kind of like liberation of oppressed peoples and like what that looks like and what that can be, and also the destructive nature and kind of the glory of the destructive elements, that like the vampire is this horrible creature but also is this kind of like necessary creature that is an extension of all the evils that we create in our society that we push off to the margins. There's very much a kind of like subdued theme in the original book. Here it comes like really to the forefront as, you know, a more modern lens on this story, bringing that out in a really powerful way. So I know that was like a lot, but this is obviously one of my favorite books. I love this shit to death. And this is just, if you have any love for vampire stories in Dracula and this kind of Victorian style fiction, as with all of Robert Eggers' movies, he just feels like a dude who somehow has like built a time machine, and he went back into the past, brought all of our modern filmmaking technology with him, and just made a movie in the time period in which it exists. It's so true of like movies like The Witch as well, where like the way the language and stuff in that movie is used, that's so authentic to the actual time period. It's very true here with the way the Victorian themes, the Victorian sensibilities are so authentic and so thoroughly expressed through every single element of the production, the acting, the writing, the sets, the costuming, but also the framing and the mise-en-scène of exploring and depicting the Victorian world, the Victorian mindset, while never losing sight of the fact that these things are still relevant to a modern audience. Like, he's just the best director for making that kind of period piece. And it's very, very gratifying to see that being used for a story that I love so much.
Oh, totally. I'm so glad you finally saw this, Sean, and were able to talk about it, because I love this movie. You said Halloween was the perfect day to see it. Well, I saw it on Christmas Day last year, because that's when this movie was released theatrically. It was a Christmas Day release, and my brother and I went to see it on Christmas Day, and I adore this movie. I've reviewed it. It was in my top 10 last year. It was my number 8, and it honestly might... And if it was that low, it was really only because it was the last movie I saw that year, so I was like trying to fight recency bias. But it might have even moved up. I was looking at the top 10 again, and I might put it above the next couple on that list. But it's a great film. I agree. I mean, Robert Eggers is just... He's one of those filmmakers just out of time. Like, yeah. I think there's something very David Lynchian about him. Not in that his movies are very Lynch-esque, but they have that quality of no one else in film history has ever made movies like these. And so, like, he feels like a full just island unto himself. And yeah, I love his work. I think he was so perfect for this. And his Nosferatu is just, it's a great, great movie.
Yeah, and there's no actor-director pair I'm more excited about than Eggers and Willem Dafoe. Just feels like Eggers is like, what kind of batshit character can I get Willem Dafoe to play in his next movie? It's so fucking perfect.
And Dafoe is clearly so willing to do anything he asks. Yes. Like, Dafoe will go so far. And yeah, because that's the other thing, is Eggers has just worked with so many great actors, and I think he's also, like, not discovered, but, like, brought actors to well, in some cases discovered. Anya Taylor-Joy, one of her first movies is The Witch. So yeah, I mean, discovered her. Lily Rose Depp in this movie as the Mina Harker character, just tremendous. Bill Skarsgård had done horror before, but like he had been Pennywise, but like his version of Orlok is just, oh my God. Bill Skarsgård just needs to make a whole career of being in deep amounts of makeup playing monsters, because he is like uniquely good at it.
Yeah, it's that kind of like monster performance where you can feel how intense his passion is for the role, even as bizarre as the character is depicted on screen. And just the weight that character has in the movie is so intense. It's really fantastic. I also want to shout out, I always love when this dude pops up, because he's in so much stuff, both in voice acting and in live action. But Ralph Ineson, who is Dr. Sievers, who is the Jon Stewart character. He's like Van Helsing's like right-hand guy, basically. But I just love Ralph Ineson. He's got like one of the most iconic voices. He is one of the main characters in Diablo 4. He's like the main dude in that game, where obviously your character doesn't speak all that much, so he's like the guy who actually talks, and it's just every time you hear him, like the whole room rumbles because of how bassy his voice is. And I do really love that character of like the Victorian doctor who's trying all the classic Victorian shit, and then it just gets to a point where he's like, Well, you know what? I did have my professor back at university, and he was totally disgraced, and everyone thinks he's a madman, but I can't think of anyone else to go to, and him slowly getting wrapped up into this, like, the world of madness is really great. Yeah, but all the performances of the movie are really phenomenal.
Sean, if you love Ralph Ineson, I've got good news for you, because the movie I watched on Halloween this year was Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and he is a major character in that, too. And we will be talking about that movie I will hold off on talking about it, because we're going to do a whole podcast about Frankenstein, and we'll tell you about that at the end of today's show. But, yes, he is Professor Kremp in Frankenstein, so you will see him there. Anyway, yeah, since you talked about a movie, let me quickly talk about a TV show. This is a bit newer, but the new Vince Gilligan show just premiered on Apple TV. It's Pluribus, which is his first non-Breaking Bad show since, obviously, Breaking Bad premiered almost 20 years ago now, 2007. Oh God, it's been a long time. But yeah, Pluribus there's 2 episodes out now on Apple TV. It's a 9-episode season. The second season has already been ordered, so that will be coming. And the show was so popular that it crashed Apple TV's servers on the night it premiered, and I had to watch it the next day. So it tells you how many popular shows Apple TV has had, I guess, which is too bad, because actually Apple TV makes a lot of really, really good shows. But anyway, I just wanted to mention it because you guys know how much I love Vince Gilligan's stuff, including Breaking Bad, especially Better Call Saul. And the thing about Pluribus, and I'm going to stay light on any kind of spoilers because the marketing itself for that show has like not actually revealed the premise, and I think for good reason, is there's an ambition to Pluribus in what it is doing that could only be done if it was by a storytelling team that has been working together for 18 years. And the core of Pluribus is this core creative team from Better Call Saul, which was the core creative team that grew out of Breaking Bad. So it's not literally all people who were there with Vince Gilligan in 2007 doing Breaking Bad, but it is the team that grew from 2007 to now. So the writer's room is basically the season 6 Better Call Saul writer's room. It's got the same cinematographer as Better Call Saul, the same 2 editors who did that show by the end, the same composer who did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and of course the main character is Rhea Seehorn, who played Kim Wexler on Better Call Saul, who is the character who basically unlocked Better Call Saul for the writers, because she is not in season 1 a ton, and it was basically, there's a big shift Better Call Saul makes in season 2 that is where that show really takes its leap, and it was around making her one of the main characters. And by all accounts, including his own, Vince Gilligan wrote this show for her. Like, this show exists because he had kind of a vague idea, met Rhea Seehorn doing Better Call Saul, realized she was the person to do this idea, and then wrote the show for her. And the premise of the show is such that although there are other actors in the show, she is really the only character. That sounds weird, but you will understand when you see it. And she is tremendous, as we all knew from Better Call Saul. I hope she finally gets a fucking Emmy for this one, because she's so good. And it's a really cool show. Like, the other thing, and the reason I wanted to note about it, Sean, is that this is Vince Gilligan going back to his X-Files roots, because Pluribus is a sci-fi show. And the first episode has that kind of like Twilight Zone-y vein of X-Files in it, but done with the like storytelling prowess that this team has built, where it's very slow, meticulous, procedure based. And so the show so far through 2 episodes feels like a fusion of sort of X-Files, Lone Gunman era Vince Gilligan and the many years of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul Vince Gilligan. And seeing those come together is so much fun. And it's a really amazing show that I hope people check out. And I'm sure they are, because Vince Gilligan's name, I think, gets people in the door at this point. It is also a ridiculously expensive looking show. Like, the first episode of Pluribus looks like it cost more than any individual season of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. And the second episode does too. They, like the neighborhood Carol, the main character, lives in. I was listening, they also have a podcast about the show like they did with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. They just built her entire neighborhood because they didn't want to like inconvenience anyone in Albuquerque by using their houses. So there's just a fully built neighborhood for this show. There's a scene that uses Air Force One where they just built basically a plane and an interior to use it. This show shoots, its home base is Albuquerque once again, like Breaking Bad, but it uses it shoots on multiple continents. There's a whole scene in Spain in the second episode. And I just love that this very clearly was Vince Gilligan getting the just a giant blank check from Apple and using every cent he could. And it's all up there on screen.
Yeah, it's really nice of him to be like, oh, well, I'll build my own neighborhood so we don't have to bother the people of Albuquerque, as though the people in Albuquerque have fucking anything else going on. I mean, come on. If they live in Albuquerque, what else are they doing other than being in a Vince Gilligan show?
Albuquerque is a very, like, modern metropolis city. It's like it's a good city. But yeah, no. I mean, I do love that he just continued. Apparently, like, on the podcast, he talked about how they wanted to do it in Albuquerque again because that's where their whole crew is that they've built for 18 years. So, like, it makes sense. They thought about having Albuquerque stand in for somewhere else because they thought maybe it's weird that all these shows take place. And then they're like, no, it can just be Albuquerque. It's fine. People can accept it. And I like that. I like that Vince Gilligan his shows are all set in Albuquerque now. It makes sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know, it's maybe somehow we'll find out that this is like in a multiverse. And, you know, that this is in the great Vince Gilligan multiverse, and over there is the Albuquerque with Breaking Bad, and we find out that actually Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul were in slightly different universes, and then over here we've got El Camino, but it's a magical El Camino, and that Aaron Paul, as Jesse Pinkman, is jumping between all the universes in the movie that's going to cross over all these projects.
Indeed. But yeah, Sean, I think this is one you're going to really like when you get around to it.
Yes, yeah. I still need to get around to fucking Better Call Saul. Like, I was going to do Better Call Saul years ago, but then I got on my Ultraman kick. So that's like, well, eventually I'll be done with Ultraman, and I'll need a new TV show to watch on the weekends with my dad. And that's what Better Call Saul will be.
No, it's good. And I'm curious to hear your reaction to this, being someone who I know does love Vince Gilligan's X-Files work and that era and stuff. So he also, I wanted to say, because I knew you were going to love this, Pluribus it's the most insane tonal tightrope this show is walking, because parts of it are like abject horror, really tense, and then parts of it are really funny, like high black comedy. And he specifically called out Darren Morgan on X-Files as someone, he said, you know, the first couple years of the X-Files, the show was very dark. And he said, Darren Morgan comes on and taught us all how you could make the dark and macabre funny. And he said, and I've carried that through Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and now this. And I love when he gives those shout outs to people from that era, because he always does. And I knew that would tickle you, Sean.
Yeah, so I can't imagine there's any, like, production in the 90s to be on that would be better for teaching you the whole world of making a TV show than the fucking X-Files, where they're just, it's kind of like being on Doctor Who or something. You're doing everything, every fucking episode on this show. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and Vince Gilligan always goes back to saying how much of a learning process that was that he still carries with him. And yeah, absolutely. So anyway, you want to talk about some video games?
Yeah, let me talk about some of my video games, because I have zero new video games to talk about, because I have been finishing the two video games I talked about on last week's podcast, because they're both very long video games. So I have finished Ghost of Yōtei. I actually finished Ghost of Yōtei a while ago. I played that game very obsessively because it is very good, and I'll get to that. And I am still playing. I think I'm getting relatively close to the end of Super Robot Wars Y, which is a game that just gets deeper and deeper further down the rabbit hole I go. Let me start with Ghost of Yōtei. So last time we talked about it, I was just at the very beginning of the game, because it was a couple of days after the game had come out. And I had very positive impressions, and I still think it's a fucking fantastic game. It just gets better and better as it goes. I think I talked about last time, one of the big things that stood out to me, because the last time I talked about it was just at me starting to see this structure, is the structure of the game as an open world game, I think, is really, really fantastic and very well refined. Even beyond what Ghost of Tsushima was, which already was a nicely refined version of the kind of modern open world game. Sort of going back to what we talked about with the Grand Theft Auto Rockstar thing, that, you know, Rockstar goes off, they make their own kind of game. There's this whole other tradition of open world game that was made in that time period that still continues to this day, and Ghost of Tsushima / Ghost of Yōtei are a continuation of those. But one of the big things that Ghost of Tsushima did was that it tried to incorporate very kind of seamless modes of you exploring the world, rather than just doing the big Ubisoft Tower thing. Even though at this point the Ubisoft Tower thing is kind of out of vogue, partially because Ghost of Tsushima is one of the games that showed another way of approaching it, by having things like you talking to characters in the world and them pointing things out for you to be able to go explore, or you are running around the world and the world is designed such to build really legible visual clues that show you, oh, over here is like a camp for me to go attack. Over here, there's some sort of mysterious geographic feature that probably has something interesting there. Or here is an animal like the birds or the foxes that can kind of bring you to different locations. And all that stuff existing very diegetically within the universe, rather than it just being, I'm going to put a bunch of points on my map I go explore. Ghost of Tsushima did all of that. Ghost of Yōtei continues it. The thing that Ghost of Tsushima had, though, that was maybe a little bit less effective was the structure of that game was very rigid in the sense of you had 3 sections to the island, and each one had a little bit of different kind of thematic and aesthetic material, but they weren't hugely differentiated from one another, and it was all the same kinds of events and things like that you were seeing in each of those 3 areas. And you basically completed the story at the bottom section of the third of the map, then it lets you to the middle third of the map, you did that, then you go into the last third of the map. With Ghost of Yōtei, because the storyline is all about the main character Atsu hunting down the like kind of gang of people that killed her family, it is a little bit more fractious in that you've got the starting area, there's like another area you can go to after the starting area that's like an extension of it, but then you've got a different zone that brings you to the kind of the Oni area, the Oni being the bad guy there. And that's all themed around this kind of war-torn section of the map, with all the enemies being themed around fire because they're burning down this like village and all this stuff. And the Oni is like just razing this whole section of the map to the ground. And then there's another part of the map you can go through that branches off. That is the Kitsune section, the Kitsune being this ninja, and that's all in this kind of northern snowy area, and there's all these like ninja shinobi themed kind of enemies and mechanics there. After you that, then you unlock another section of the map where kind of all of these different elements of the story come home, and you have to deal with the kind of last section of enemies that all are tied directly to Saito, who is the big bad antagonist of the game. And that structure is just so smart because it really differentiates all the different regions of the game much more heavily by having them being like totally disconnected. Like you can technically travel from one to the other, but you have to go through a load screen or a cutscene to go between those different regions, rather than having it all be completely seamless. And I think it's smart for them to say, hey, that seamless thing is nice and it's cool when maps do it, but it also is a limitation. And it's one of the limitations of open world games that older video games don't have, where in older games, when you do not try to build a totally seamless open world, you can more easily differentiate between the sections of the map. So you can say, hey, over here is the snowy mountain area, and we don't have to actually show you how you go from the swamp to the mountain, the snowy mountain. You can just fucking go there and it's fine. And we're just going to kind of warp you there. And I really like that Ghost of Yōtei takes advantage of that because it means that each of the areas gets to feel so well designed unto itself and then gets to contribute to the larger whole. And in particular, the Kitsune section of the map, which is the snowy ninja region, that's the real standout of the game. That's one of the best open world designed sections of the game I think I've ever played. Where you've got all these kind of puzzles that revolve around this codex of these like 7 or 8 ninja kind of like symbols that they've designed that like once you learn what they are, they show you like where traps are or how to like solve certain kinds of puzzles. You have all these cool little hidden areas, these like secret hidden ninja bases that you have to find ways to access. The main story of that region is really fascinating, where you have this one character who in the Japanese version is voiced by Romy Park. That's a really great kind of like female mentor to Atsu that has a very complicated relationship. That region is also kind of an extension of this mini section of the map you go to, which is where the main Ainu village or the Ainu Kotan is. And so you get to interact a lot with the Ainu, who are the indigenous peoples of Hokkaido, and they do a really great job with that section of the story, which gives the main character Atsu a very different perspective on the world by interacting with these people who are not part of the cultured communities of all the stuff that she's come from and have a kind of an outsider perspective on what she's dealing with. And so that nature of the open world design is just so strong. It's so well refined. It's like as best as you can really get. And it's buoyed by the fantastic gameplay feel that's an extension of Ghost of Tsushima. The combat is very rich in that very expressive way the original game was. You know, if you're someone who wants like big, elaborate combat chains and combos and a Devil May Cry kind of super elaborate thing, this game's not doing any of that. But if you're someone who wants a combat system that's very expressive of a specific vision and try to get the player to play into that vision, that's what Ghost of Yōtei does so well. And the kind of play acting you can do with things like after you finish a fight and you swipe right on the touchpad and and Atsu flicks the blood off her katana and slowly sheathes it. The way in which you kind of embody the character through the way the combat works, both with the attacks, but also the kind of little bells and whistles around it. It's very thoughtfully done. It's very effectively done. And then you have the main story. The main story is the one place where I feel like it's not all just an improvement over Ghost of Tsushima. It's more kind of trading blows with Tsushima. I think Ghost of Tsushima has a little bit of a stronger punch in its main storyline, where the climax of that game with Gene's confrontation with his uncle is such a strong, big, intense kind of expression of the central themes of that game that's so fantastic. The ending of Ghost of Yōtei, I think your final confrontation with Saito is good, but it doesn't necessarily deliver on that kind of feeling that Tsushima does. Instead, though, what Yōtei has is it's got a very interesting kind of subtle themes around it that come into focus in the ending in some specific ways that are pretty fascinating. I can't really go into because it's too spoilery to even kind of broach it, but there's a sense of specifically the ways in which this game is about a woman in this story and a woman going through this world and trying to do this revenge story, that Atsu, there's a very kind of interesting kind of feminist lens through us to read the story, in the way that Atsu is treated so differently than all the men in this world. And she's kind of condescended to by a lot of people in this world. And a lot of men who don't understand that Atsu doesn't really have a lot of choices. There aren't a lot of places she can go. There's not a lot of lives that she is allowed to lead because of the patriarchal world in which she exists. And so this way in which she's kind of trying to remove herself totally from society by taking this path of revenge and becoming this almost supernatural figure in the minds of the people, in a similar way that Gene became this almost supernatural figure to the people of Tsushima. Atsu has a similar thing in the world of Yōtei, but it's so much about people who are on the margins, and people who are kind of not given the same sorts of opportunities. One of the main merchants in the game, who's a big supporting character, is this little boy whose family is dead, and he makes a living by basically looting corpses of battlefields. And so he's treated like this, almost kind of pestilence by the regular people, but he is one of Atsu's main allies. And there's a lot of stuff like that, where I think it has such an interesting perspective on the ways in which Atsu's whole life has to go down the certain path that so many other people are completely blind to because they're men. And then there's all these very rich female characters, and that's what kind of comes into the ending with how all these different kind of women come together in this one kind of unit that I think does have a very interesting thing to say. There were a lot of women who were some of the main writers of the game, so there is, I think, a very clear kind of feminine voice there that has a really interesting story to tell. So that's narratively, that is where my mind really went a lot, was the ways in which it's looking at this story about people on the frontier using violence to try to get by in the world, and using a female character in that role rather than a male character in that role. And what does that tell us about the world in which they live in? I think that stuff in the setting and the world of all of that is really fascinating, even if the actual revenge story at the center of it is a little bit kind of by the book. I think for me, that I've seen some people be very disappointed by that. For me, that's kind of fine, because I think the story has this kind of a little bit more by the book central plot line, because really it's energy that it's trying to put more interesting narrative elements to. It's all the stuff around the edges, and that creates a very evocative ending that goes for something very different than the first game did narratively. So Ghost of Yōtei, great game. If you like samurai stuff, if you like open world stuff, especially if you like the first game, Ghost of Yōtei, it is a great game, and one that is also just getting lost in that world, running around as Atsu and exploring every nook and cranny is so fun and so rewarding and so engaging, that it's definitely one of the best games I've played this year.
That's awesome to hear, Sean. And I haven't gotten to it yet. You and I both have a lot of games we haven't gotten to yet. So I'm glad you could cover it for us, because obviously we both loved Tsushima. And I'm also just happy to hear that, as you were explaining, developers are once again willing to just right, the map doesn't have to be fully contiguous. We can't just break up the map. It's okay. I think there was a period where that was thought of as some weird PS2 era thing that was just purely a technical limitation, but it doesn't have to just be purely a technical limitation. There are lots of good reasons you could structure a game that way, and I think it's interesting to hear that this game is doing that again.
Yeah. Very, 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 very good game.
Well, I've let me give like quick updates on a couple ones, and then I'll maybe bring in the big game I'm playing now. I did finish Hades 2 since we last talked. I was pretty deep into Hades 2 last time we discussed it. I've now like fully beaten that game to where I think there's still stuff I can go in and do in it, but I've rolled credits for those who played Hades 2. What does it mean to beat one of these games is a little hard to define, but I rolled credits. And I like Hades 2 a lot. I love it as, like, just to play, it's fantastic. I think it's as good as Hades 1, if not better. There's two separate roguelike games within it, the going down and the going up. And the up route is so brutally difficult at the end. There was a point where I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to beat this. And then when I did beat it, it was the best feeling in the world. And then the subsequent getting to the point where I could easily beat it. Like, the way these games walk you through that process and make it feel possible, going from, I'm never going to beat this, to, this is a walk in the park for me now, and then you can start adding in different challenge modes if you want to make it hard again. It's a thing of beauty, and it's wonderful. There has been controversy over the ending of Hades 2, such that after I beat it, they have actually done a Mass Effect 3 and gone in and patched the ending.
Oh,
and apparently, yes, there is a spell you can do. You go back into the game and you do a spell at the cauldron that allows you to reset the state of your game to before you would beat it, so you can see the sort of extended ending. My understanding is it is not a replacement or anything, but it basically takes the events of the ending and doles them out over a longer period of time with more narrative details, because the people had different complaints. My complaint would be, I think the ending of Hades 2 that I played, so the like original 1.0 launch ending, was thematically perfect. It was the exact thematic resolution I think the game was always building towards, and it felt satisfying to me. I think the delivery of it was sort of rushed and whiplashy a little bit, but overall I was satisfied with it. I've moved on to other things, and I have a lot to play right now, so I have not gone back in to kind of restart and see the revised ending, and I don't know if it would fix those problems or not. I do think it, even at its best, the narrative of Hades 2 kind of reveals what a fucking magic trick Hades 1 was, because the magic trick of Hades 1 was taking a roguelike, which is inherently a thing where you go in and do the same game over and over and over again, and it found a way to build a really rich, character-driven, forward-moving story out of that essentially repetitive gamic function. And it did that because it framed its narrative as this fundamentally Sisyphean thing, and Sisyphus is even in the game to like help you learn this lesson, of your main character Zagreus trying to achieve a goal, ultimately learning that goal is inachievable, and finding joy in the process of doing without that extrinsic final reward of ultimately succeeding and reframing what success means to him. And that is such a great story. It's a story that really uses the function of the roguelike in the same way that like Hidetaka Miyazaki stories like Dark Souls and stuff use the function of dying and coming back in a way that is like really key to what those games are. But I think the problem is you can't tell that story more than once. Like Hades 2 can't also be, hey, Zagreus has a sister who also has to learn about the Sisyphean story. Like, you can't do it again. And so Hades 2 tries for something different. It tries for something more about sort of the nature of time itself. And I think it's good, but I do think where it runs into problems is that the form of the game is less amenable to telling this story than Hades 1 was to telling that story. And so where I found the story to be kind of rushed and sudden was in, suddenly there's a big plot turn that has to happen, and the only sort of language they have to do that with is your basic Hades-style cutscenes, which are, you know, your character portraits and people talking, kind of like a JRPG visual novel kind of thing. And that's fine, but the Hades story is usually designed to be those sorts of things are delivered in pretty short bursts, and you can feel them. There's a tension in the original Hades 2 ending of them trying to figure out how long can we actually push this before we break what language we've built, where our cutscenes are usually not very long. And so I understand why the ending winds up feeling rushed and I'm curious how that revised ending fixes things. And I'm not upset about them revising the ending necessarily, because this was an early access game. They update their, it's kind of like part and parcel to what this is. But yeah, so like I think my feeling even last time we talked about Hades 2, Sean, was I thought it was gameplay-wise an improvement on Hades 1, and story-wise still very, very good, but a downgrade on Hades 1, and I think that's where I would still ultimately land. And I think ultimately I probably prefer the just sheer unity of purpose that Hades 1 has, and would still call that the better game. But I am impressed that Hades 2 is as good as it is, because I think Hades 1 is a really tough game to make any kind of sequel to, and that Hades 2 works as well as it does is spectacular, and it is still one of the year's best games.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of heard, a little bit of people being disappointed as they started getting to the end. I don't obviously I haven't played it, so I don't know all the details, but I had not heard that kind of they have a massaged version of the ending, perhaps. But that's that's very interesting.
Speaking of sequels, I have also played some of Power Wash Simulator 2 for all my Power Wash heads out there.
So how do you feel the narrative of Power Wash Simulator 2 stacks up to the revolutionary narrative of Power Wash Simulator 1?
Okay, so Sean, you're joking, but there are people who swear by how great the writing is in Power Wash Simulator, because there are all these messages you get while doing the washing that are like funny, and they build this kind of interesting meta-narrative. I've always ignored all that because I'm there to wash shit, and like I don't need to read a novel while washing shit. I have heard from the people who do pay attention to all the text in the game that it is even better in Simulator 2, but I have not been paying attention to that.
At the end, you realize that while you may have been washing these dirty-ass, disgusting houses, really you were washing your own soul the whole time.
Power Wash Simulator 2 is interesting because it's a very incremental sequel. Mainly what it gives you is... I know.
I just love the idea of an incremental sequel to Power Wash. I mean, what else would it be? All you're doing is washing shit.
It basically gives you many, many more tools to work with in the washing, and then it's able to start bringing in more complex structures to wash earlier than Power Wash Simulator 1 did. I think so far it suffers from a couple of things for me, one of which is it's a little janky on Switch 2, which is unfortunate. Like, it feels like it needed more time in the oven. There's nothing it's doing that I don't think the Switch could handle. It just needs better optimization. Like, the frame rate is inconsistent, and there's some just jumpy stuff that happens. It just does not feel as smooth as it should, and that's a little unfortunate. And again, I do not think that is because the Switch 2 is underpowered. It is Power Wash Simulator. It could run on anything, I'm sure. But yeah, so that's a little disappointing. It does also, the save system in this one is wonky. It just erased 3 full levels worth of progress for me at one point. And a level in Power Wash Simulator can take like 90 minutes. So I have not gotten back to where I was because that kind of killed my enthusiasm for it. So yeah, if you haven't picked it up yet, I might hold off and just... Because Power Wash Simulator 1 also has so much content and DLC that right now, because this is the new one, it feels relatively like less fleshed out. And I'm sure over time it will build back up to the point Simulator 1 had. But that means it doesn't feel as much of a must-buy as you might have hoped if you were just a huge Power Wash head,
I mean, maybe it's all about the grand meta-narrative, where at the end, the last thing that you wash is the game itself, and you clean it free of bugs and performance issues.
Indeed. But the big game I've been playing over the last month has been Pokémon Legends ZA on the Nintendo Switch 2. It does also have a Switch 1 version. But yeah, this is the big new sort of Nintendo release for the month. It is the latest in the... What am I explaining? It's the new Pokemon game. You guys know what it is. The thing that's interesting about Legends ZA is that it is, I would say, the third in this interesting sub-series Pokemon has been doing over the Switch's lifespan. That started with the Pokemon Let's Go games, Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which I guess you could also say this is an evolution of Pokemon Go for mobile phones, of Pokemon Go to the Polls fame, obviously. Yeah. So that was Pokemon Legends, not Pokemon Legends, it was Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee, and those were remakes of original Red and Blue, but with new catching mechanics that made catching into... You weren't battling the Pokemon to catch them, you were doing other things with throwing balls and using treats and all this stuff to get the Pokemon. That kind of grew into Pokemon Legends Arceus from a couple years ago, which is a completely new game, but it uses some of those same catching style mechanics, and so it is more of it's a game where it's more focused around catching lots and lots of Pokemon rather than doing sort of JRPG battles with them. And then Legends Arceus also introduced some small changes to the battle system, although it was still fundamentally the turn-based combat. And then it also had some interesting story stuff because Legends Arceus is set in the distant past, and it's about like the first person ever building a Pokedex, but they're doing it by hand in a journal, and the Pokeballs are these interesting kind of janky wooden objects and whatnot. And so you had all of that. And I liked the Let's Go games quite a bit. I thought they were very fun, light, breezy, but interesting. I thought Legends Arceus was fun, but one, it ran into what a lot of the Switch era Pokemon games did, which was just jank up the ass. And that one, it was like it could theoretically be a very lovely game, but like the fact that Switch era Pokemon games had so much pop-in, such low frame rates, kind of hurt a game that was all about like seeing the horizon and finding all the Pokemon out there. And I also thought that was like that game had the worst writing and storytelling of any of the recent Pokemon games, and it kind of bored me because Pokemon in the Switch era has actually had really good writing and storytelling, and that game was kind of an outlier there. So now we have Legends ZA, and I'm not really sure what they even mean by Legends with this sub-series, other than just like games that are full JRPGs but experiment with Pokemon stuff, because there aren't a ton of actual like connections to Legends Arceus. This is a game set in the present day. It is a direct sequel to Pokemon X and Y. It brings in some of the characters from that game and continues like the story of Team Flare and stuff from X and Y.
I just now understood why it's called Pokemon Legends Z. I did not, in my brain never went to the XY thing. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Because there never was a Pokemon Z. XY was the only one that never had a like third version or a DLC or anything. So, and X and Y were great. X and Y are some of the best Pokemon games. So Pokemon Legends ZA, it's the big things that this one does experimentally is it keeps the catching mechanics basically from Legends Arceus, although they are simplified. It does not have the like treats and berries you can throw out. And I kind of wish that was still there because that made that whole process a little more fun and involving. But its big changes are that it is set entirely within Lumiose City, which is the capital of the Kalos region. So it's a city that you would have gone to in Pokemon X and Y, but it would have been just one of your many stops. So now it is a big fleshed out version of the city, which is Paris-esque. So it's all a big circle and a series of basically concentric circles leading to the Kalos Tower in the middle. And the whole game is set within that city. And then also it has completely redesigned Pokemon battles in a really interesting way. So now it uses all of the same like moves and stuff, but it's now in a sort of active real-time battle setting where you are moving around the field with your Pokemon. You can literally dodge moves that way. So like space matters in a way it obviously never did when it was just a turn-based RPG. And instead of having the power points, the PP that moves used to have, so you could use like Thunder 10 times and then you couldn't use it until you restored your Pokemon. Now all of the moves have timers on them and like refill timers. So if you use Thunder, you have to wait 8 seconds before you can use it again or something like that. I don't know if that's the exact timer on Thunder, by the way, but you know what I mean. And so that replaces all of that. And so now it's fully active and you're running around the field. You hold down L to target a Pokemon and then your 4 face buttons become your 4 moves. And as in Legends Arceus, you still only have 4 main moves, but you can assign any move that Pokemon has ever learned at any time in the main menu. So it's more like, a battle system like Final Fantasy 16, where you set what each of the face buttons does in the menu, and you have access to everything you've ever had there. So it's more that kind of thing. And it also means that, attacks like Growl or Leer or any of those status attacks that in an old Pokemon game you would always get rid of because you just never wanted to use up a turn using one of those shitty moves, now have a real purpose because you can use Leer, it attacks the Pokemon, and then you can immediately go into like Crunch or Water Gun or something like that. And so you can create these kind of dynamic combinations. And all of that combined with the sort of Pokemon Legends Arceus catching system where you're just, you can throw out Pokeballs as much as you want and you're on the field with them. And you never break into a separate screen or menu or any of that stuff for battling catching. The best thing about Legends ZA is it is fast. Like, when you compare this to other, especially more classic-style Pokemon games, this game just moves at such a different pace, where you can be in one of the wild zones, which is where the wild Pokemon live within Lumio City, and you can be fighting like 5 different Pokemon at once. You just are chucking out Pokeballs, you're switching your Pokemon on the fly to like get someone more effective out there, and all of that is really fun and engaging. I think the basic like battling and catching of Pokemon has, as an overall system, has really never been more fun in these games, and I hope they continue experimenting with this, not just in these like Legends offshoots games, because I don't think this game does everything perfectly, and I wouldn't expect it to, being the first game that completely overhauls these things, right? But I think it's a really fun, engaging system, and I think there's clear ways where they could continue to build on this, improve it, and I think it just, overall, I kind of judge Pokemon games at this point by how much they encourage me to get a lot of Pokemon, raise a lot of Pokemon, use a lot of Pokemon, and this game really beautifully does that. Like, I have a main group of probably 20 to 30 Pokemon that I've been raising, and they're all up to like level 60 something. And you can just so easily get into your boxes, change your team around, have a lot of Pokemon you're raising all at once. There's lots of things in the world that will allow you to raise your level of your Pokemon in case you get one late in the game that is low level, but you want to get it up to the same level as your group. So there's lots of options for that. And it is really, really good at that side of thing. And I think a lot of the recent Switch era Pokemon games have been getting better and better at this. I also thought Scarlet and Violet, for their graphical flaws, I thought they were very fun games, and I thought they were very good at this side of Pokemon. But I think the additional kind of fast action battling is a really key thing that I think has unlocked a lot of what this game is doing. And in a lot of places, it honestly does remind me of Digimon Story in just how fast you can level up, evolve, switch your Pokemon around, how flexible it is with creating different types of teams and compositions and move sets and all of that. And it makes for a really engaging game. It is also notably harder as a game than recent Pokemon games. Like, it level scales actively in a way most Pokemon games do not do. Like, I'm in the 60s. There are other things out there in the world that are pushing, like, oh, I still need to go level up. In a lot of Pokemon games, by the time your Pokemon are at level 60, you are never going to meet a single opponent in the world that could possibly, like, challenge you, other than maybe the Elite Four. And so this game keeps that scaling up, and because everything is active and fast, there's more places to make mistakes, there's more places to, like, get an edge on your opponent, and so it is, like, a fun, challenging within reason. This is still a game for children, and I do think sweaty nerds on the internet who want Pokemon to be Dark Souls for some reason should keep that in mind, that this game is also built to be accessible to small children, and it is, and that's fine. But, like, if you're into all of the, min-maxing Pokemon shit, this has a lot of that in there for you as well. And then, like, the storytelling is great in this one. It's not my absolute favorite of recent Pokemon. Again, I think an underrated part of Switch-era Pokemon is, for all of the graphical problems that Game Freak has had in the Switch era, their writing has been on form. Sword and Shield had great writing and characters. I think Scarlet and Violet had a really good story, and, like, where those games end up is really cool. And just the general moment-to-moment character writing is so fun. And I don't think Legends ZA has my favorite, like, overall story, but the moment-to-moment character writing is as good as it's ever been. And, like, there's a lot of just funny, cool, fun stuff to find with the characters in the world of this game that is really neat to see. In fact, there is a subplot in ZA that has the hardest thing, the hardest I've ever laughed as a Pokemon game comes here, where you meet this group called the Society of Battle Connoisseurs, the SBC, which are these, like, it is Pokemon making fun of adults who are too into Pokemon games, because it's this group of adult battlers who are constantly talking about, like, elemental type matchups and getting your, like, attack stat up and all of the stuff that you get from, like, certain corners of the internet. But when you meet them, they are basically bullying a group of small children who just want to use the Pokemon that they think are cool and fun. And the SBC are, like, trying to bully these kids into using their Pokemon in more of a, like, sweaty nerd min-max sort of way. And these fucking kids dunk on those guys. So, I don't have the picture up on my phone. I thought I had this, but I took pictures of all the dialogue here because it's so funny. But basically, the kids are just so savage to these SBC nerds, and it is such a direct shot across the bow from Game Freak to people who forget that these games are also for kids. It made me absolutely howl with laughter. And there's some very good stuff like that in here. The music is also just tremendous. It's a very jazzy, fun score. Music has also been really good in Pokemon for a long time now. And finally, unlike all the Switch games, where a lot of this stuff was also good, the graphics are fine. They're not great. It doesn't look, it's not a masterpiece or anything. It's a pretty simple set of like textures and environments and all that. But it looks totally fine. On Switch 2, it runs at a nice solid 60 frames per second. The resolution is high. There are no real problems. Like, could it look better? Absolutely. This is, when people say the Switch couldn't handle Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they are disseminating misinformation. The Nintendo Switch could handle 7 Scarlet and Violets. The Switch can run Doom. The Switch can run The Witcher 3. Game Freak didn't know how to code for the Nintendo Switch. And I do still have a concern that the only reason Legends ZA runs is because the Switch 2 gave them a bunch of overhead, and that when they start developing for the Switch 2 specifically, I worry we're going to be right back where we were, because the problem is that Game Freak just doesn't know how to optimize for the system, and that is a very different problem than the system not being able to run. But for this game, for now, on the Switch 2, totally fine, no real technical problems to note. It is a very, very far cry from Scarlet and Violet and the issues that game had.
Well, that's very good. I'm glad to know that you can play a Pokemon game without offending your eyeballs, which seems to have just been the situation that you had to just sort of, sacrifice your eyes to the altar of, I got to play my Pokemon game.
Here's what I will say about that, Sean. I always felt that in the Switch era, Game Freak was still fundamentally making their Pokemon games as handheld games. And if you played Scarlet and Violet, Sword and Shield, any of those on the Switch handheld, it wasn't perfect, but it felt a lot more natural. And it was when you would put it on the TV that your eyeballs would hurt. I do think Scarlet and Violet were unplayable on the TV. I played those games portable and I was mostly fine with it. Legends ZA is the first Pokemon game from Game Freak that you can put on a TV and it looks good and acceptable and fine on a modern 4K television. That's the big difference, I would say, here.
And you don't have to get a weird big thing to stick off the bottom of your controller that you put your little cartridge in, like when I played Pokemon Yellow through Pokemon Stadium on my CRT when I was 8. Then your controller just felt like it weighed 20 pounds.
Yes, exactly. Were you going to say something else, though? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, just I just think it's nice that you can play one of these games because again, as someone who just watches them from the outside, Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet are 2 of the ugliest games I think I've ever seen in my life, just looking at video of them. And that's definitely not true of Pokemon Legends ZA, which is how I insist to pronounce this title of this game. You can't call it Pokemon Legends Z-A. It must be Pokemon Legends ZA, they're all baking delicious pizza. That this game, as you said earlier, it looks fine from the outside, and the gameplay looks really interesting. It feels that Arceus was kind of their first step into this world of the kind of more real-time gameplay thing. But this just looks a lot more appealing. If I had a Switch 2, I might potentially play this game, which is not a thing I felt looking at footage of Pokemon games in a very long time.
Yeah, no, I would definitely, if you have not gotten into Pokemon in a while, this is one that I would recommend. I did actually show this to my students in my video game class because I was showing them, we had a week on Pokemon and I showed them original Pokemon Red running on my analog pocket. So original, that's not the original hardware, but it's hardware emulation. And then I jumped over to Pokemon ZA, which was brand new. And I thought that was kind of fun to show them back and forth, oldest Pokemon game, newest Pokemon game. And my students thought it looked cool. And one of them went out and bought the game because they had Nintendo Switch 1, and it is on there. And I think it runs pretty much fine on Switch 1 as well. Not as well as on Switch 2. It's 30 FPS, but it's not as offensive as Scarlet and Violet were. And people seem generally into this one. And I recommend it. One thing it brings back that I loved from Pokemon X and Y was the Mega Evolutions. That is probably one of the coolest things about ZA, is because Mega Evolutions, every Pokemon game since X basically has had one of these kinds of gimmicks. And in X and Y, it was the Mega Evolutions, where certain Pokemon would resonate at certain points in the battle, and they could turn into new forms that had new character designs and new powers and were just generally more powerful. And then they replaced that in Sun and Moon with the Z moves, which fucking sucked. Sun and Moon are the worst Pokemon games. Those games fucking terrible. Then there was Sword and Shield with the Gigantamax, which didn't matter at all. Stupid part of an otherwise fine game. And then Scarlet and Violet, I don't remember if they did anything like that. But now you have Mega Evolutions again, and they've refined the way they work in, I think, a really fun way. Like, the whole game, there's a base system in ZA called Plus Moves, where as you collect basically what's called, like, the Mega Energy power in battles, and it's this little gauge on your screen, you can activate that to, on any Pokemon, if they've used a move enough times, it turns into a plus move, and you can activate plus moves, and then that move does more damage than it normally would. And any Pokemon can use those. But if a Pokemon can Mega Evolve, it goes into its overall Mega Evolution state, and then everything it does is a plus move for that time. And I think evening that out so that the whole Mega Evolution system works in some way for all Pokemon and isn't just a thing that happens with certain Pokemon at certain points in battles is a clear improvement on X and Y. And you get all of the cool new Mega Evolution designs, which are really fun, and a lot of them are really cool and interesting to see. And they've made up new ones, obviously, for some Pokemon. And I know there's more coming in the DLC that's coming in December. Like, we're finally getting a Mega Raichu, which we have not had. For some reason, even though Pikachu is the Pokemon, he's never Mega Evolved. So we'll get that finally.
I have seen footage of the Mega Evolved Starmie, which is horrifying because it just looks like a man in a Starmie costume, and because it just runs around on its fucking legs, and it's so like, if you look at it, you're like, how did they because it doesn't look like it's Mega Evolved, it just looks like it's a man wearing a costume, and it so looks like that, like if Starmie was a monster that fucking Ultraman decapitated or whatever, cut into little pieces. That's what it is. It's very weird.
Well, but that's the thing, is that if you haven't played the actual game, the game is very aware of that, because you meet Mega Starmie for the first time. There's a series of, like, effectively raid battles you have to do in the main story, where Pokemon are rogue Mega Evolving and, like, running out of control, and then you have to go stop them with your Pokemon. And in those battles, you're in this, like, special arena, and the Mega Evolved Pokemon is this big thing that can attack you, not just your Pokemon, and so you have to be careful of where you're going. And Mega Starmie, its thing that it does is it just runs around the battlefield really fast, stomping on you. And, like, so they know what they made, and it's very funny.
They know what they made, and they should feel bad and good about it at the same time.
I did think it was so funny that I did get my Starmie out of my box and level it up so I could make my own Mega Starmie, which when you have it on your team as, like, a normal-sized Pokemon is somehow even funnier, because it's just, like, you-sized, and it's just like you're running around with your buddy in a Starmie costume. It's great.
Yes, this is my poor friend who's, psychologically been destroyed, and the only way he can go out in public is if he's wearing a giant Starmie costume. I'm sorry.
All right.
All right, so you talked about Z-A. I want to just briefly talk about why. That is Super Robot Wars Y. Just to address the fact that I am just so deep down the fucking rabbit hole on this game at this point. I think I've put like 70 hours into it, and it's still going. This game is huge. And there's just so much to it. Because I think the last time I talked about it, I was like 20-something hours into the game. And having a lot of fun with it, but also had not yet fully wrapped my head around what the game was doing, because I don't think I had unlocked the shop for the game yet. Because this game is pretty wild. Like if you're kind of putting or describing these sorts of tactics games, something like a Fire Emblem, these sorts of things. I feel like these games exist on a certain kind of spectrum, where one end of the spectrum is how important or how much of the game is about the individual choices made in specific battles. And it's like your tactics in this like one level, and how much is the game just about that versus how much of it is about the meta game of you building up a team and leveling things up and like creating good team synergy and compositions and things like that. Like the old school Fire Emblems are very far on that one end where it was all just like battle, and it's the tactical strategy of just this one battle, and that's really what you're focused on. And maybe you're trying to level people up at the same time, but that's not so much what you're doing. And then later games start building in you're like kind of grinding, and you're building up those relationships between the characters, all that kind of stuff. Super Robot Wars Y exists really far to me on this game is about the meta strategy and the team composition, where the individual fights are good and they're fun, but they're mostly there as a way for you to play around with the units you've created, and to enjoy the big spectacular animations and all that kind of stuff. Because once you get to a certain point of the game, and it's when you unlock the shop, which is a thing that shockingly only happens after you get through chapter like 3 of 8. Like, you don't unlock the shop till very deep into the game, but that's for a good reason, because the shop totally like breaks the entire balance of the game in a way that's incredible. Because Super Robot Wars Y, and I guess this probably applies to all the games, but this is the only one I've played, it just has such a complicated interlocking series of elements for each unit. Because you have your pilot, and your pilot character has stats associated with them. Your pilot character also has specific skills that they learn when they level up that you activate that uses up a specific meter. But they also have specific passive skills that they can learn that define certain elements of them. Like, can this character do a support defend where they can defend an adjacent character when they're being attacked? Well, that's a thing that certain characters that are more support-oriented units will learn as a passive ability. Then you also have the mechs. The mechs have their own series of stats, and the mechs also have their own special passives that they unlock. And the mechs also have gear slots that you can put on that give their own abilities and improve them in certain ways. And so that's already a lot. That each individual unit has like 5 or 6 different things that they are leveling up that go into what makes that unit what they are. This is a combination of the pilot and the mech. But then on top of that, when you unlock the shop allows you to buy, as far as I can tell, without limit, most of the passive skills that exist in the game. So you can make any character in the game be a character that can do the support attacks and support defends and heal other units. Similar, you can give any character in the game the second attack ability, which is a really powerful ability that Amuro gets by default that allows him to do 2 attacks in a row if his skill stat is higher than the enemy by a certain threshold. For most units, that second attack ability, which is normally very powerful, isn't useful because their skill attack isn't high enough for it to trigger. But in the skill shop, you can buy as many fucking stat upgrades as you want. So you can make anybody have high enough stats to trigger that attack on basically every single one. So you get to this place where you can make like any character in that game do whatever the fuck you want, as long as you spend enough money on them. So if you want to make the most fucking game-breaking Choo-Choo, or Choo Terry Panlunch, my favorite character in the game, because she's just my favorite character in anything ever, you can give her every single ability in the game and level up all those abilities and make her stats ridiculously high, so she just snipes motherfuckers from like 12 spaces away and does 2 attacks in a row, and also those attacks pierce their defenses, and also those attacks reduce their morale, which reduces the number of attacks the enemies can do. And there is just there's a different kind of depth to this game that I didn't realize that existed the last time I talked about it, that is just on this whole crazy meta level. And that's beyond all the crazy story shit. That's beyond the fact that at that point I talked about the game, I didn't know that you can import fucking MP3s into the game through a flash drive. So now whenever Char fucking does his all-out attack best move, it plays Here Comes Char, because I put Here Comes Char as an MP3 on the flash drive and put it in the game. And that's true of like, I have all this fucking Gundam Wing music and all this Gundam Seed music, and you can change which song plays on which attack that characters do, and all this shit. And it's just, this game is nuts. I knew it was nuts, but I have now played more than enough of a game to understand the degree to which it's nuts, and I'm having a fantastic time, and I have no idea how long this game is going to be. Like, I think I've played like 70 hours, 60 to 70 hours, something like that, on my play clock. And I think I'm getting kind of close to the end, but I don't know. But I'm having a great time, and I feel like this game is also slowly turning me into a crazy person. The way that every person I've ever seen talk about Super Robot Wars online seem like insane people, I now understand, because I feel like I'm one of them.
Maybe, maybe it was good for me to avoid this when it came out, and instead I'm playing Pokemon, and, Pokemon, I'm having a lot of fun with it, but when I'm done with it, I'll probably just be done with it. Yeah, this sounds like a lot, Sean.
I had a dream about Super Robot Wars the other day. Like, it's like, that's the level at which it's like getting into my subconscious. It's weird.
I had an unescapable image when you said that of you like reclining on a Freud-style couch with like a therapist writing, and you just said like, "So what's on your mind, Mr. Chapman?" "I had a dream about Super Robot Wars Y the other day." We'll have to interrogate that. Was your mother in this dream?
Oh, there were so many mothers. There's the mother from Gundam. There's Lala. She could have been my mother. It's like, you have no idea all the moms in this game.
All right. The other game I've been playing, but just a little bit of, but I just wanted to mention, because I know people probably want to hear my thoughts on it, because I loved the last one so much. But we do have now the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake package from Square Enix, following up on last year's Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, which was my game of the year last year. I fucking loved that remake. And I'm so far very much enjoying this one. I'm not super into it because I am still also trying to finish up. I'm not quite done with... I'm very close to the end of Pokemon, but not quite. So I've played the first 4 to 5 hours of Dragon Quest 1 on this package. And I will say my main conclusion so far is that, like, Sean, you and I talked about remakes earlier with Halo, right? Of, like, direct remakes versus ones that are more sort of reimaginings. The Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake from last year was fundamentally still Dragon Quest 3. And Dragon Quest 3 has had certain iterations over the years, and it keeps those additions, and it adds some more stuff as well. Like, it had a new job type that you could use, it had some more endgame stuff, but the basic, like, gist of the package was it was a new graphical remake of Dragon Quest 3 with some modern quality of life improvements, and it was so good at that it, like, elevated it to a certain level for me. But, like, I would also say that if someone came to me today and said, I really want to play Dragon Quest 3, which version do I play? I would, without hesitation, say just play the HD 2D remake. That is, as of 2025, the definitive version of that game. Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D is a new game. It is a new game inspired by Dragon Quest 1, but it is not a remake in that same way. And that is understandable because Dragon Quest 1 is a very different kind of JRPG, and they have released these in such a way that now Dragon Quest 1 is the sequel to 3, because they put out 3 first, right? And so this is... And 3 is also a prequel. So in the canon of Dragon Quest, 1 and 2 happen eons after 3, and 3 is about the original Loto/Erdrick, like, hero, the original Yusha. And so 1 is now kind of following up on 3, and it's using the same environments, because while past versions of these games, the geography has differed more, it's able to use the exact geography from 3 since they had just made that remake. And so it's able to have more continuity in that way. The basics of Dragon Quest 1 are still there. It does not... The big thing that I am happy about, you still have one player on your team. It is still the classic Dragon Quest 1 where you are alone out there in the world battling slimes and you do not have a party, which I think is one of the things that makes original Dragon Quest so special and weird and interesting. But they've added a lot of narrative scaffolding around things. I think it's all very much within the character of Dragon Quest, but it is there's a lot more story around the edges. Basically, all of the writing is new. There's writing that is kind of inspired by scenes from Dragon Quest 1, but it is basically an entirely new script that is very heavily extended. Certain, quests and things you have to do have been drawn out and extended in different ways. And so far, I am enjoying it, but you do kind of have to put yourself in that mindset. I have heard from one listener who really didn't like it all that much because of how different it is, and I totally understand that, because Dragon Quest 1 is such an interesting, fun, weird, totally unique JRPG. It is also a game that has been remade like 75 times. Like, there are many versions of Dragon Quest 1 out there. So I'm okay with them doing something new with it. Jury out on, once I beat it, I can tell you whether or not I think this new version is still, like, worthwhile and interesting. And I do think the listener who texted me about this on Blue Sky had an interesting point, which is that it's theoretically fine to do a new game inspired by Dragon Quest 1. The problem is that description does describe every other Dragon Quest game and many other RPGs, because Dragon Quest 1, the original thing, is such this vestigial kind of skeletal version of the entire genre to come, that it's interesting to do a remake that is more of a reimagining, because in some ways every Dragon Quest is a reimagining of 1, and I think that's a good point. But yeah, so far, I mean, it's graphically just as gorgeous as 3 was. I'm playing the Switch 2 version, and it is now 60 FPS, higher resolution, absolutely gorgeous. You've still got the full symphonic Sugiyama score, which sounds great, and it has some really cool voice acting. My favorite thing in 1 so far is that your main character, who you name yourself. I named my main character Haran Banjo, the hero of Daitarn 3, which is, we're doing an Artomino-thon, and I have to say, Sean, Haran Banjo is my new favorite JRPG name, because it is just so cool to go around the world and everyone's saying, Haran Banjo, how you doing? You know, whatever it is. It's such a great name. But the voice, and you only ever hear it in battles, but the person who says all the spell names and does all the ooh, ah, all that stuff, it's Hanai Natsuki. It is Tanjiro Kamado, is the main character of Dragon Quest I, and it is so fun to go around this world and hear him getting to yell "Hoi me" and everything else that the main character yells. What an awesome little casting they got there.
Oh, and that means you get to hear what the spells are actually called, and not weird localized versions of all of them.
Yes, you do. So I just love that they went to the trouble of getting Hana. There's a lot of big voice actors in this, as there were in 3. I mean, 3 had Okia Atsuko at the end. It's just amazing. Yeah, these games, they've really, there's not a ton of voice acting in them, but they've gotten very big name actors for it, which is cool to hear.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, any other stuff, Sean, before we move on?
I think I'm all stuffed out, Jonathan.
All right, well then, I think it's time for the monthly 10. And if memory serves, I gave you a pretty crazy topic, didn't I, Sean?
Yes, Jonathan, you gave me a topic that I struggled with for a long time. So you gave me the topic I've written down here: top 10 tragic Shakespeare plot points / characters that Taylor Swift could turn into hit love song singles. Inspired by her songs Love Story and her more recent song The Fate of Ophelia, 2 songs that have precious little to do with Shakespeare. Love Story is technically about the plot line of Romeo and Juliet, but what if it didn't go bad and they got married instead for reasons? The Fate of Ophelia really has nothing to do with Ophelia. That song is about Taylor saying, I would have ended up like Ophelia if her boyfriend wasn't so nice instead of being a bastard like Hamlet. Like, I don't know. I guess that's the point of that song. So look, as we get into this, I want to just make
to be fair, Hamlet is a total dick to Ophelia. I've seen some people play down that is like a plot. That is the plot of Hamlet, is that Hamlet gaslights Ophelia into killing herself.
Okay, yes, no. Let me make it clear. So I want to say a couple of things up front. One, I'm not a Swiftie. This was the first time I ever intentionally sat down with a choice to listen to music that she wrote. I think these songs are totally fine. I don't think they're amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think they're terrible. It's interesting to listen to, one song she made when she was kind of a kid, Love Story, which is like your kind of acoustic love ballad from the late 2000s, and how different The Fate of Ophelia is. You can see how different pop music has become and her arc as a artist, all that kind of stuff. It's not my thing. I don't think the lyrics are good. I think they're bad in 2 different ways in between Love Story and The Fate of Ophelia. Love Story's lyrics are incredibly cringy, which I can kind of give away because she was basically a kid. There's a very cringy Scarlet Letter reference that's in the lyrics to Love Story that just makes my skin break out into goosebumps. The Fate of Ophelia, I think, just the plot with that song is a weird way of trying to bring Ophelia as a literary illusion, because Ophelia as a literary illusion for the past several hundred years has really been used as a way to criticize the patriarchy, because she's a character who is manipulated not just by Hamlet, but by her father and brother, and shows how she is driven to the point of madness and suicide / her accidental death, depending on how you interpret that in the play, because it's left ambiguous. But she is driven to that point because there is nowhere for a woman to live in that world, in the same way that Hamlet's mother can't live in that world other than to sleep with Claudius and plot against her own husband and all this kind of stuff. And the way that Ophelia is used as a literary illusion in The Fate of Ophelia is so slight, is so surface level, so does not engage with any of the content of any of her history as a very, very famous literary and artistic illusion. Just the lyrics, it's truly groan-inducing to me. It's the chorus line. All that time I sat alone in my tower, not a thing Ophelia does, that's a Rapunzel reference. You were just honing your powers. Okay, now I can see it all. Late one night you dug me out of my grave and saved my heart from the fate of Ophelia. All that time I sat alone in my tower, you were just honing your powers. That like having this male figure be someone who's off in the distance, quote unquote, honing his powers and being the one who has to rescue her from her tower, because if this male figure doesn't do that, she will suffer the fate of Ophelia, is a weird way to use Ophelia as a literary illusion, because it is the opposite of criticizing the patriarchy. It's the same problem with Love Story, that it's just like she just needs a better boyfriend, and that's what will save this, because the original boyfriend sucks. But it's like there's not a way of looking at the larger cycles that both of these stories are about. And so I would say the Shakespearean content of these songs is poor, is my English teacher assessment of the lyrics to
Sean,
Love Story and the Fate of Ophelia.
I have already gotten out of this segment so much more than I thought I was going to get. I got you to listen to 2 Taylor Swift songs and do a full English teacher critique of them. You just read Taylor Swift lyrics on the air. This is amazing. I do want to stress that The Fate of Ophelia is from an album that is pretty universally now regarded as by far her worst album. It's really bad, the new one. Love Story, I think, is much more defensible in that I think it does authentically capture the way many teenage girls probably do engage with Shakespeare.
Yes, no, I mean, it's a shitty version of doing anything with Romeo and Juliet, but that feels kind of authentic to, as you say, this very young, kind of naive thing. Like, it's looking at Romeo and Juliet as a love story, which is not what Romeo and Juliet is. It's a tragedy.
But that is a very common teenage mistake with that play. So yes. Anyway, I'm already so happy, and you haven't even gotten into your top 10 list.
No. So before I get to the top 10 list, I need to explain that I found it basically possible to give you the top 10 list as you originally outlined, because she did not turn Shakespeare plot points or characters into hit love song singles. That's not what those 2 songs are. So I sort of adjusted a little bit of what I've done, Jonathan, is I haven't really made a top 10 list in so much as I have created a chronology of 10 events that is my anticipation of 10 songs that Taylor Swift will make from now to her eventual death, from hopefully natural causes many years in the future at the end of her career as an artist. And I've created 10 songs here that are where I see things going. And I have for each song given it a title, like a premise, and I have written a section for a chorus. So I have taken a shot at trying to write some Taylor Swift style lyrics. I looked at several other of her songs to try to get a little bit of the style. So I wasn't writing anything that was totally outside the realm of the kind of things she writes in her songs, while also trying to actually use literary illusion and Shakespearean references in a way that actually works. And the actual language of Shakespeare, and adopt it.
This is already my favorite monthly 10 ever. This is so good. This is great.
So I want to make it clear that this is all for fun. Swifties, don't fucking crucify me. I really don't care all that much about Taylor Swift. I'm not trying to be. I'm going to poke some fun at her in a couple of places on the very little I know about Taylor Swift. But this is all done in good fun. It's fine if you like Taylor Swift. She's obviously very, very popular. She doesn't need anyone to defend her, despite what the rabid online fan base does for Miss Swift. So,
Sean, please understand, there are 0 Swifties listening to this.
There is one Swiftie listening to this because they're recording it with me right now, Jonathan, and it's you. Yes. Look in the mirror, my friend. Because I'm the only one, and I know that there's no one listening, because whenever I talk about it, I get no response. All right, very good. So this is a safe space for me. So let's start I don't know what to call this, my timeline, my first event. This is another Romeo and Juliet-based song. I call it On Both Your Houses. Taylor revisits her epic classic love story, but now with a twist. She's writing from the perspective of Mercutio. In this sequel song, Taylor writes about her desire for revenge, a plague on both the houses of her boyfriend and the girl he left Taylor for. And my chorus for this song goes, "Here's my fiddlestick, bitch. Here's what will make you dance. You're just a rat catcher, a dirty little plot hatcher, with her claws in my man, ruining my grand plan. For him, you're just one of his dumb wives who will take one of his 9 lives. So now a fury in me rouses, a plague on both your houses." You have no idea how plausible that sounds. In her career arc, in the kinds of petty shit she writes, you have no idea how much that sounds like it could be right off like 3 different Taylor Swift albums. I read the lyrics to quite a few songs to give me some inspiration, so I maybe have a better idea than you think because of me trying to figure out what to do with this fucking top 10 topic you left me. So that's my first one. All I'm saying, Sean, is just that you haven't lived with it in the way that you say that, and I'm just like, I can see myself like walking through Boulder campus as a student 10 years ago listening to 1989, and I'm like, yeah, no, that could have been a song on there. Yeah, so that's the beginning of this arc, is that, she's revengeful about losing her boyfriend to some girl. The next song is referencing Richard II. I call the song Let Us Sit and Talk. This is a song about how Taylor feels like she's done it all, risen to the top of the pop music scene, and now must deal with all those people below her, trying to take her down a peg. She uses the Death of Kings soliloquy from Richard II as a grand metaphor for her place in the industry. And my chorus line for this goes, I'm not what they say I am, and not what you think I am. I eat like you, I want like you, I love like you, need friends like you. My crown is hollow, too. Draped in my chains in this tragic scene, the question remains, am I really a queen?
I love it.
All right, so that's her, questioning her place in the music industry. Next up, we have the song, this is very topical for what we talked about today. It's the song called Havoc, adapting Julius Caesar. This is a passionate ballad professing Taylor's sensual joy and a new and profound love she has found. She writes through the prism of Mark Antony's impassioned love for his beloved Caesar. Because if you have not read some of the language of Mark Antony talking about Caesar, it is very erotic, and I've tried to adopt that here in this chorus line, which goes, so let me kiss those ruby lips. Let me beg that utterance of tongue. O Caesar's spirit, you're hot as hell, and I'm in need of that foul deed. So let me sing have it and get high like a dove. Let me cry havoc and let slip the dogs of love.
Until like her most recent album, the way she would write erotic content in her songs is actually so much like this that like, yeah, she literally actually makes fun of the way people talk about her writing about love on the new album, and I can see this could definitely have been a song on like Lover or something.
Yeah, but there's that whole speech that Mark Antony gives about like the wounds being like ruby lips that open and speak to the tragedy of Caesar's death. It's like, it's so weirdly erotic that about half of the language in there is me just slightly adjusting language from that speech. It's very interesting. All right, next up is a song for Macbeth. I call it The Spot. A song about how Taylor is like Lady Macbeth, a woman who has used her position of influence within a patriarchal system to accumulate tremendous wealth and power in exchange for her own morality. She describes how she'd be trying to clean the spot on her hands like Lady Macbeth were it not for her boyfriend. And my chorus line for this is, and I would have been cleaning that damned spot if you weren't so damned hot. So now my hands are free of blood and my heart is free of crud because you've washed away my spot.
I mean, now all I'm thinking is it's good, hot, and this is There
you go.
This is silly.
Yes, Jonathan, you're correct. This is silly. It's maybe one of the most true things you've ever said in your life. All right, next up, we are coming back to Hamlet for a song I called Method in It. In this sequel to the song The Fate of Ophelia, Taylor puts herself in the role of the Danish prince himself. In the lyrics, she now describes how she realizes her lover was an obstacle the whole time, a mere stepping stone to her true desires in the world. She describes how she uses him as a tool and drives him to the point of destruction, all for the sake of her own mad objectives and desires. With my chorus going, to me it's not a question. To be is my profession. While you're remembered for your sins, I'm just remembered for my wins. I'm ambitious, vengeful, proud, but my music drowns it loud. And while this madness you may rue, I'll get what I am due.
You got her rhyming style dead fucking on in that one, Sean. That's like exact to how, especially in recent years, she's done, especially in the big pop anthems, like the sort of poetic style.
It maybe goes to show that writing pop style lyrics is maybe not really that hard. it's pretty straightforward.
There's a lot of skill in doing it and making it good and popular and big. I'm not going to downplay that, but yes. Or maybe, Sean, you just have an inner Jack Antonoff in you that you have not discovered yet. Yeah,
maybe I've missed my calling for sick Shakespeare adapted pop singles. All right, so that is her. This is now she's on her downward trajectory, right? She's now drowning in her own wealth and power, and losing herself to it. Next up is an adaptation. This is for King Lear. I call the song Howl. Taylor imagines herself in the guise of Cordelia, the tragic daughter of Lear, who holds on to her morality and filial duty, even by defying her father's gift of tremendous wealth and power. This is my hot take on Taylor Swift. Only in this song, Taylor/Cordelia survives the event of the story because she actually accepted the incredible wealth, power, and influence from her wealthy father, which helped her establish herself in the world. So, this is like her other songs, which they're about the Shakespeare play, but it's about the exact opposite of what the play is about. So chorus line here, I'll take my third and be grateful in turn for the intros and tickets to the studio visits and the summer home with the recording booth and the hidden truths that wealth in this world is all that moves the minds of fools. So now I'll howl to those crying foul and I'll get Nepo, baby. So step off, baby, and then just maybe you can be like me, baby.
Great use of the term Nepo baby to introduce a repeated rhyme of the word baby.
Thank you very much. All right, next up we've got from Henry IV Part 2. An underused play because most of it's not good, but this is the one killer scene in that play. This is I Don't Know You is the title of the song. In this song, Taylor writes in the voice of King Henry V speaking to John Falstaff. Taylor writes to all the people, friends, admirers who helped her get to where she is today, but all of whom now hold her back from her endless pursuit of wealth and fame. She's totally in her villain arc at this point. My chorus line is, I don't know you, gray-haired fat fools. I don't know you, leech-brained rat ghouls. I'm not who I was. You're not who I am. Leave here because you're all just a scam. Run now, flow through, because I don't know you.
Yeah, I can see that. I can actually hear that applying to a different song. Just like you could replace that to there's a song just called Now That We Don't Talk that you could literally put those lyrics to and it would work.
There we go. Very good. All right, next up we have Othello, this song called The Fruit of Whoring, which is a line from Othello. In this song, Taylor adopts the persona of Iago. She confesses how she has been using her music to twist and manipulate the affections of the public, just as Iago whispered poisonous lies into the ear of Othello. My chorus line, like a parrot on your shoulder, I've whispered over and over, these sweet little somethings to you sweet little nothings. To buy up all my merch till your wallets are all scorched and your petty little lives are paid for by your tithes to this boring enterprise that can't help but be scoring the fruit of all this whoring.
That sounds like a banger. I want to hear that one. That sounds great.
Yes, that's one of my favorite ones I did. I like the idea. One, I just love that line that Iago has where he describes one of the characters' death and he just says it's the fruit of whoring. This is what he gets for whoring around when obviously Iago has orchestrated the whole thing. All right, so that in my arc of Taylor Swift's career, this is where she's gone full villain mode, and at this point, she's just alienated everybody in the world, and her career goes on hiatus because nobody's listening to Taylor Swift because she's just not only mocking her family, the people the people she's loved, but also the fans who listen to her. She's just fucking flipping them all off and saying "fuck you," and their career collapsed because of it. So that brings us to then the Tempest-inspired song called This Last Tempest. In this song, the first after a long hiatus, Taylor writes from the perspective of Prospero. She reflects on how her brutal and cutthroat approach to her career granted her great power, but also made her a target and alienated the people she had once loved. She writes at a remove from a world she once was at the center of, but is now as one where only the young can truly thrive. And my chorus for this song is, the story of my life was always filled by strife, but now I drown my book without a second look, for all the magic has faded, and the night must be abated. Could you forgive me this sin of vanity? I'm nothing but air, a touch, a feeling. Please no more despair, we all need healing, from the storm that sent us, from this last tempest.
Nice.
That's if people have not. Tempest is not a play I'm a huge fan of, but the last act of Tempest rules, and Prosper has some fucking just 10 out of 10 soliloquies that I pulled most of that from. All right, and this leads us to our final song. We're coming back to King Lear. This is the song Never. I see here it is released posthumously. This is Taylor's last ever recorded song before her death due to natural causes, isolated in her vast mansion complex nestled in the mountains of Pennsylvania. She revisits one of her most controversial songs.
Wait, I thought she lives in Nashville. Why Pennsylvania?
She was born in Pennsylvania, said her Wikipedia page, so she's gone back there.
Okay, fair enough, I guess.
Gone back to where it all began.
Okay.
All right. She revisits one of her most controversial songs that served as a turning point in her career, Howl. In this song, she now writes in the guise of Lear himself, only a Lear who lacks even the 3 daughters to inherit her wealth and knowledge. She looks back on a life of incredible fame and power, but one that arrived at the most obvious, sad, and tragically cliche truth of them all, that none of it mattered without people to share it with. And my chorus goes, if I could do it again, I would never, 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 never let it slip away like this, like breath staining a mirror, like a cry straining the wind. No, if I had one more chance, I would never, 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 never let my howl be heard like a sinister whisper, like a foul spot on my soul. No, I would never. I would never.
I like that you've basically given her the arc of Charles Foster Kane.
Yes.
And there's going to be some kind of rosebud in the mansion being burned.
Maybe it's this. Yeah. It's this last song. It's Never. It's the last thing she ever recorded. It's you know, it's her last message to the world, but it never really gets out there. You know, she would lived a bold life. She was on top for a long time, but blinded by the wealth, the fame, the power. You know, it led her astray, and then she ended up alone. So sad. So sad.
But Sean, this segment fucking ruled. Thank you for going way above and beyond what I had expected. This is great.
I don't know what you expected. I've realized when I started making the list, I'm like, I have no idea how to make this list. And the only way I could do it was by writing modern pop lyrics of Shakespeare songs. It was the only thing my brain could go to, which maybe says a lot about me.
You went so far for this one that I'm slightly scared about what you're going to throw back to me right now, Sean. So what you got?
Well, don't worry. I have not come up with anything crazy for you, Jonathan. I think I've come up with a list of things that I think would actually be really helpful for us to think through. You know, next month is Christmas, Christmas month, right, with December. And Christmas has been around for a long time. You know, particularly the modern version of Christmas, it's like over 100 years old. And we've accumulated a lot of crud of Christmas traditions, Christmas mythology, Christmas folklore that maybe isn't just relevant in the bold, technologically driven world of the 21st century. So, Jonathan, I want you to come up with the top 10 ways that Christmas traditions and mythology should be updated to match our new modern world.
Should be updated to match our new modern world.
Who is, you know, Frosty the Snowman in the 2020s? Who is our Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you know? Like, what Christmas trees? We don't have fucking trees anymore. We've cut all that shit down. This is the kind of thing we need to know. What do we do now for Christmas these days?
I'm just writing this down so I have references to go on. You know, what do we do now for Christmas? Well, one thing we're doing is we're getting rid of all extant Christmas music is going out the fucking door.
All right.
We're starting over on that.
Yeah,
if only to get rid of that.
You need to create. I know. What is new Christmas music? We don't need all this old shitty Christmas music that's been around for 100 years. What is our new Christmas music? You know, there's just so many things we need to update about this holiday.
As long as it's an excuse for me to make fun of that awful Paul McCartney song, I'm good. All right, so Sean, we did it. We completed another episode, and we will be back later in November for an exciting topic episode that you suggested that I'm very excited we get to do. We're going to do an episode about Frankenstein. Do you want to tell us what the idea is here?
Yes, so this is inspired by the new Frankenstein movie made by Guillermo del Toro that is now on Netflix, so everyone can see it very easily. It was in limited release for theaters, which I know, Jonathan, you saw it. But we will be talking both about that movie, but we will also be talking about the original book, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. We're specifically reading the original 1818 version of the text. For people who don't know, there are multiple versions. It's not that important if whatever version you read, the changes are more kind of granular. So any version of Frankenstein you read will work, but if you want to read the exact kind of text we're doing the original 1818 version. And then we will also be discussing the original James Whale version of Frankenstein, which is the movie that everyone knows with Boris Karloff as the creature. It's the very famous black and white Frankenstein from the original Universal horror movie series. And we are very pointedly not doing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the Kenneth Branagh movie with Robert De Niro as the creature, which I offered up as an option to Jonathan, not expecting him to take it. And I got what I expected, which him saying, no, fuck that, we're not doing that movie.
I've never even seen that movie in full, Sean, but what happened was I was not TAing for a class this semester, but it was while I was at Iowa, they had me running the screenings for a professor, and this professor, I don't even know what the class was, but he was showing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I guess it was a class about hating your fucking students, because he's showing this movie, and I set the screening up and I started watching it, and I hated that movie so much. That movie is so loud and annoying and overwrought that I left and sat outside the room doing other stuff until I had to come back in and watch like the last 20 minutes, which are awful. And I don't think there's any less flattering comparison you could make in film history than that one to the new Del Toro. Just a chasm. But no, I'm excited, Sean. I started reading the book the other day. I was at the dog park with Phoebe, and I was on a bench and I had my Kindle and I started reading it, and I thought the prose in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from page 1 was so fucking good that I put it down and I said, I'm too distracted at the dog park to be reading this. I want to pay more attention to this because this is so cool. So I'm excited to read more.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's sort of a spiritual successor to our Great Gatsby podcast. It's one of my favorite ones we've done in recent times. And yeah, so we'll talk about the book, we'll talk about the classic movie, we'll talk about the new movie, and we won't talk about the Kenneth Branagh movie, but we'll have a lot of fun with Frankenstein next time on Purely Academic.